another edition of Turned Out a Punk. I'm your host, Damian Abraham, and once again I'm bringing you a conversation with someone who grew up listening to punk, may or may not still be involved with punk, but had their life changed by the genre in a major way. And today on the show, not one, not two, but three incredible guests from the bands Cold World, Glitterer, Citizen the Band, and Title Fight, Alex, Ben, and Ned. The Russin brothers are on the show, and oh my gosh, am I excited for you to hear this. Three unbelievably cool people, and this is a real fun conversation that's been 2 years in the making. This episode took 2 years from when we started recording to when we finished recording it, but I'll explain that in a second. First of all, though, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can head over to the email address turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com. That is run and answered by my brother, who is the show's super producer and normally guest booker, but I booked this one myself, Tristan Abraham, and he will get the message to me. You can also find me on Instagram or Twitter at Left for Damian. There is a Turned Out a Punk Instagram page. There's a Turned Out a Punk Facebook page, a YouTube page, and a TikTok page. All of those are found at Turned Out a Punk on those platforms. If you want to support the show, the best way to support the show is by telling all your friends about this podcast, letting them all know that we've got this podcast over here and posting about it and all sorts of, that kind of stuff. That's great. I play in a band. If you want to support that, you can find out more information over at fuckedup.cc. We've got a tour that we've just announced of the West Coast with the Mighty Mighty Superchunk, a band that I had if you go back to listen to past episodes of Turn Out a Punk with members of Superchunk, you'll hear me kind of extol the virtues of this band and tell all these stories. But a band that I actually had a job working for very briefly when Laura asked me to watch their merch table way back in the year 1999, 2000, when they were on tour in the UK. And here it is, years later, and now I'm on tour with them, playing shows. So there you go. Follow your dreams, climb that ladder, and one day you're going to be on the label and you're going to be on tour with them. And that's the dream. I'm very excited about this tour. Find out more dates over there at fuckedup.cc, and we got new records and the usual. The band never stops. This band is constantly. Our heroes are the Melvins, so we're just trying to walk in those sort of steps and just constantly doing stuff. All right, on to today's show. Today on the show, speaking of heroes, we got some of my favorite people, some of my heroes. We got on the show today from the band Cold World, from the band Glitterer, from the band Citizen the Band. Actually, I should probably reverse that. From the band Cold World, from the band Citizen the Band, and Glitterer, and also Title Fight, and just so many other bands we could go through. Magnus and all sorts of stuff. We talk about a lot of it in the episode. As you'll hear, Alex, Ben, and Ned are on the show. The Russin brothers. Now, these are a family that I've known for a long time in various capacities. Alex I've known for a very long time, and then I've gotten to know Ned and Ben a little bit over the years, playing shows with Title Fight, and just watching these family always be a force in music. Not become a force in music. They've always been a force in music. Cold World is one of my favorite bands, and I'm very excited for you to hear this episode. I don't know. I don't want to ramble on too much about it because you're going to hear me ramble on with them for a very long time. But first, I should tell you that the new Glitterer record, Ned's band, has just been announced, and it will be coming out on February 24th, 2024 on Anti Records. The record's called Rationale, and Just a Place is the first single. It's fantastic. You can check out a video for it up on the Tube, and it's on all those streaming services as well. So pre-order that record right now. Go run and do it. And also, while you're at it, head over to citizentheband.net, I think it is, .net, and check out the Callin' the Dogs LP, which is, of course, available everywhere now on Run for Cover Records, and that is Ben's band that he has been playing in the last few years, and they will be going on a bunch of touring, actually, in 2024. In February, they're going to Europe, and you can find out more information. Oh, and then after that, going to Australia and all sorts of places. So you can find out more information, once again, at citizentheband.net. And for Glitterer, I think it's just glitterer.com. And both those bands will be going on tour, and check them out. live. I've seen both of them live, both fantastic groups live. But speaking of fantastic groups live, Coal World, who have been firing on all cylinders this last year, I don't know what the hell they're doing. I don't know what they've got planned. Hopefully one day there's a new LP. I would love to see it. I love all the records. And especially because live they're doing so good these days. But, with Coal World, as you'll hear, not as much of a priority. But in the meantime, if you do want to see Alex and you have some legal issues, reach out to Alex Russin, attorney at law. Alex has helped me out with legal stuff for this podcast and contracts and things in the past. And I trust Alex completely. And I love the guy, as you'll hear in this episode. So I can definitely say check out russinlaw.com if you have any legal requirements. And now, with all that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy Alex, Ben, and Ned Russin on Turned Out a Punk. Ben, Ned, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I was thinking about it, and I think you're the first family of hardcore, certainly East Coast hardcore, because I can't think of another family that has 3 people currently involved in it. I guess the Mackays, Amanda Mackay, Alec, and Ian.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to think of some other three siblings in hardcore situations.
Well, I mean, it's kind of 2. Two of them came out at once, so.
Wow,
it's kind of
3 people. Well, you got a 4th sibling that's not into this stuff at all, right?
And we have 2 other siblings as well. That
2 other siblings.
either.
So
3 total.
3 total.
We have 1 other brother and 2 sisters.
So it could have broke another way. It could have broke, one of you could have been not into punk and hardcore. That could have possibly happened. But anyway, we'll get to that. Welcome to the show. This is a big thrill for me. I'm a fan of all of your projects. And I think, in terms of Title Fight and Coal World, 2 of the most important bands of their respective eras, and bands that kind of ushered in changes to hardcore and punk in a lot of ways, and certainly brought in little mini subgenres in their wake. So we're going to get into that. But we got to start off the way they all start off. And I guess, Alex, we got to start with you, unless there's a twist and one of you 2 were into punk before Alex and got Alex into it. But I think we're going to start off this way. Alex,
that would be incredible.
That would be amazing. If that was a twist, they're like, yeah, I got into it through my little brother. Alex, how did you get into punk?
It's kind of it's a strange story because it's actually like twofold, right? So when I was in 4th and 5th grade, my best friend who lived a block away from us, his name was Steve LaQuintano, and his oldest brother, who was in high school at the time, was like a straight up sharp skinhead, right? But also like a metal kid. So this is like Black Album-ish timeline, okay? Like, around then, like Black Album's coming out. So we would go to his house, and I remember we would watch like the video for One, the Metallica song One.
Yeah.
And then we would watch like Angelic Upstart's VHS videos in like 4th grade, like in just a regular kid who really liked the Chicago Bulls and the Phillies. So
did you ever find out where he got into this stuff from? Like, that's so weird.
No, I know, because like I was too young to really ask. Like, to me, like he was the only older kid I ever had like any dealings with. So in my mind, that was just what every teenager was into. I was like, oh yeah, like if you're 17, you're probably into Metallica and Oi music. Like I was listening, like I was singing Cockspar in 5th grade, but didn't know what it was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then middle school came, Steve moves away, and I just sort of was, the fledgling regular old middle school kid. And then in like 8th grade, my one of my still best friends, Greg Nearhood, his older brother was into, so like this is like when everybody starts getting into like skateboarding and rollerblading, whatever. And I owned a pair of rollerblades and would rollerblade over to where the kids would rollerblade and skateboard and just sit there because I couldn't do anything. It's like I would take them off, put sneakers on, and play basketball just to hang out. And because there was a basketball court there. And his older brother was into like Earth Crisis and Warzone and stuff like that. And then like those dudes there was a couple older ones who would go to shows and like sort of get us into whatever through that. And I remember like, so like I still have this in like the back of my mind of like, you know, all this like punk stuff that I didn't realize was punk, I guess, at the time. And I remember where we were sitting there and the one dude, Dan Perry, who I have seen recently and has no idea who I am. He was much older than me. He was playing, he brought a boombox and he was playing No Effects The Bruise, where they you know, they say like oi oi.
Oh yes.
And I remember hearing oi for like the first time again from when I was in like 5th grade, and now I'm in like 8th grade or summer going into 9th grade. And it was like one of like those crazy, like it was like a spiritual moment where it was like, oh, this is all supposed to be something big or something. And then I don't know how this happened too. It's like I think it's maybe it's an our age thing. I'm bad at this, but you know, like the way you kind of most people get into like hardcore is kind of through like either like metal or punk, and it's almost like a catchier version of it, right? So I remember like getting that stuff and being like, this is pretty cool, and getting like Misfits records and things and being like, this is pretty cool. But like real early on, like one of the two of the first things I ever heard was Don't Forget the Struggle, Don't Forget the Streets, and the Minor Threat discography. And I was just like, this stuff, this is cool. That other stuff I don't like as much. And I instantly gravitated towards it. And the first show I ever went to was it was above a skate shop. There was only one show there. Bigwig was the headliner, and I loved Bigwig. And there was this one of the opening bands played. It was this band called Magnus, and Magnus played, and they did I Don't Want to Hear It. And I like just remember instantly like watching it happen and being like, this is it. Like there was just like a crazy circle pit. People were going crazy. There was moshing. The singer like was really cool. Like he looked cool. He had like a cool stage presence.
Was he wearing construction gloves at the time?
No, I don't think he wore construction gloves that show. But like he had like a Wolfsburg Scranton straight edge hoodie on. There one of the other bands, there was this band called Hate Potion that played, and something was going on with them and like the local Riot Girls. So like Wolfsburg at that time was like a political punk like epicenter. Like this is like when like the Wilkes-Barre Fest and all that stuff were going on. Like, you know, you would go to a show and there'd be as many, you know, Food Not Bombs and Free Tibet tables as there was band t-shirts.
Yeah.
So if not more.
Yeah.
And so like this band said something about the Riot Girls, and like I remember like the singer of Magnus gave a speech about the riot, about like how that band like, you know, needs to watch what they say or something, like standing up for girls. And I was like hell yeah. I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. And then that was it. Like I just started going, like just immersed myself. So like that was, I can tell you that was October of my freshman year of high school, was my first like show. Like that was the first time I was able to go and went, and I just sort of fell in love with it, and then ended up being friends with those guys. And then I played in Magnus at the end.
Were you already playing guitar at that point?
I think I was playing guitar, but I don't think we didn't really have a band at that point. Like that was the first band came. The freshman year is when we started Vermicious Canids. That was like the first band. And then sophomore year is when we started Frame of Reference, which is the first hardcore band with my friend Greg Nearhood sang and Gary Decker played bass. And that was the first band that ever played Posi Numbers Fest.
Oh, wow. So, yeah.
Where it was the one, it was just one day in Nanacoke, and Atari was the headliner.
I thought it was Rob Fish's band.
108?
No, they
played.
Oh,
Judas Factor. Judas Factor.
Judas Factor played, but they weren't the headliner, and there was beef at that one too because Rob Fish broke a microphone, and we were like, "Hey, Bob and Dan Mills put it on." So Magnus, Dan Mills sang in Magnus, and Dan Mills sings in Cold World, and I still sort of talk to him. And Nick Woj ended up playing drums in Magnus. He didn't at that show yet, and me and Nick are in Cold World.
And you're pictured on the 7-inch. At least your arm is, right?
Yeah, I'm on the 7-inch. Gary Decker took all the pictures of those 7 inches. I played in Magnus after that. After that 7-inch, they added 2 guitars, and I played like probably 10 shows with them, maybe. I think they were all in Wilkes-Barre. Like, I still wasn't allowed to like go out of town with just friends at that age. You know what I mean? Like, which is knowing. So the other dudes in the band, Magnus, Jody, and Jesse, my parents actually made a very good call. Those dudes were full on lunatics. Jesse, rest in peace, but they lived on the top of this giant hill. It's called Giant's Despair, and it's like they have a hill climb up it. Like it's a race. It's the craziest thing in the world. Like the road, I think it's like a 45% grade at one point, like something outrageous. I'm probably wrong, but it's like super sharp turns. These guys would ride down that with their lights off and Teen Wolf on the top of their van.
Oh my God.
When we were like 16 years old. So my parents saying I shouldn't go on the road with those guys is probably a wise decision.
Went on to tattoo Britney Spears. No,
he did tattoo Britney Spears. Jesse did,
yeah. His legend is sung on the Nick Woj episode. I think Nick Woj Part 2. We talk a lot about him because he also is friends with Jason Mewes, right? Or was friends with Jason Mewes.
Yeah, right? yeah. They were good friends. Yeah, like the last time I saw Jesse, he was telling me about that.
Yeah, it's
saying how they'd shoot up together and eat a gallon of ice cream.
That's a friendship. That's a friendship. That's a tight bond.
Yeah, I guess.
Did Stick Together get the name from the Stick Together Magnus demo?
There's a couple Stick Together songs, but that's one of them for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, it's funny you said that also about Minor Threat and Warzone. Like with Warzone, I can see, like you were talking about, like the sort of like needing the melody to be your entry point to punk and hardcore. Yeah. And with Warzone, you kind of see it because of the Oi influence. And Minor Threat, weirdly as well, had hooks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some like Ian does like a little bit of singing.
Yeah. It's like 2 notes singing. It's like a real like simple thing, but it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like It Follows Me. And
I found the same thing when I got into like, when I was getting into hardcore and stuff, it was really Minor Threat and hearing Minor Threat and hearing that kind of melody cut through. And, have you heard that Ben Gibbard cover of Filler?
I listened to it after hearing your podcast with him.
It's amazing, eh? How like it completely recontextualizes the song.
Yeah, it's cool. And it was cool hearing him talk about like how that melody came to play. Like, the same thing we're talking about now is how Minor Threat had this kind of melody and
and when
brought that to light.
I think that's, I don't know, for me that was always important. I don't know, I kind of gravitated towards that, especially at first. And then like the youth crew kind of sound, which is, I mean, that was huge when I first started getting into hardcore, like that was our age, right, Damian? Like, so like, and that whole sound kind of had a little bit more of that sort of feel to it. Maybe not the sound necessarily, but like the feel of like a somewhat typical song structure, something you're kind of used to. Like there's something familiar about it. Like that's kind of, I don't know. I mean, Flame Still Burns. Like you listen to that song, like that's like one of the first songs you hear, or like New Direction or something like that. Like you slow those songs down a little bit, and like they're just rock songs almost.
Yeah, and there was something about the presentation of that youth crew hardcore at that time, especially coming off, like you're talking about Bigwig and sort of that Southern California Epiphat and post Epiphat sound and world, where it had the same sort of like shine to it. And I could see how it was sort of the next scene that a lot of these kids graduated onto.
Yeah.
So I guess Ned and Ben, what are your first memories of punk rock? Like, obviously, which one of you was kind of into it first, or were you kind of at the same time? Because I think there's a tendency for people to, and I know you probably know this far better than I would, but to assume that twins experience is the same experience. But was it like, were you guys getting into it at the same point?
I'd say so.
Yeah, more or less. Because the big thing, the first show that we ever went to was a show that Alex booked, and it was like a show that our whole family went to.
The only show I ever booked.
Yeah. And what was that? Was 97?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
had to be.
yeah. So Alex booked a benefit show for our cousin who was in a car accident. And it was Vermicious Canids, 8-Ounce Joe,
Bedford.
and Magnus. Was that it? Was there one other band?
That's who I remember playing. There might have
Yeah.
been like another friend band. I don't recall.
Yeah. And so Ben and I were 7 years old, and like our whole family went just to support the cause and stuff. And also at this time, like, it's very like blurry for me. I don't know if you have better memories of it, Ben, but it's like I was vaguely aware of what, like, you know, quote unquote punk was through just like mainstream representation of it at the time, and also like through Alex. But it was like it was way different than what I thought it was. Like, I have like weird, very specific memories from that show. I remember I wore a tie-dye shirt, and Alex told me that was cool because Richie Birkenhead wore one on the cover of the Underdog record, which I don't understand like why I remember that. But when I saw the Demos record, like, you know, 10 years later, I was like, oh, this is what Alex is referring to. I remember that. I remember like the lights turned off during Magnus, and I thought they were like actually terrifying. Cause that was the other thing. I was like, oh, this is like, I was like in my mind talking a big game. Like, oh yeah, like I'm like down with this thing that I don't even know what it is. And then I got there, I was like, oh, this is like much more frightening than I anticipated. And I was like, this is like, they're like, the bands are playing with the lights off, and like the people are like moving all crazy. Like, this is kind of weird. It's a lot for a 7-year-old to comprehend. I remember Ben was selling soda behind the bar, and I think that's where Ben's dislike from soda comes from.
I don't remember that. I remember getting a drumstick from Ed Gita at that show, the drummer of Bedford, who went on to sing in a band called Ann Albatross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
there's pictures of the show. My memories of the show are from the pictures that are at Mom and Dad's house.
Yeah, but that was like our introduction at 7 years old, and just like seeing Alex and his friends hang out at our parents' house, and just like, you know, looking up to him obviously and being like, oh, like this stuff is cool, I want to like this, but also being too young to have any real interests. And then when we were like probably 12 and 13, and like this is, you know, like we were into popular bands at the time that were like mainstream but came from like the underground bands, like whatever, Blink-182. And I mean, like Alex showed us Blink-182 in around the same time as that first show. And I remember Christmas,
that was like Dude Ranch, right? Like,
yeah,
they were big, don't get me wrong, but they weren't like,
wasn't where it was going to go.
It wasn't arena big.
Yeah.
I remember like when they put out Enema of the State being like, oh man, they're sellouts. And I was 9 years old, you know, and just because I wanted like a cool opinion, you know, and like I wanted to be cooler than my friends at school who like had just found out about them. But so we had like some small interactions with punk, like through that, like around that same time. I remember Alex gave Ben and he gave me Cheshire Cat on CD by Blink-182. I think this was Christmas 97. And then he gave Ben Pennywise, what record, Ben? Yeah. And then like, so we had these like small things, and I bought like Static Age, like around the same time, and like stuff like that, because that had just come out. But it feels like we didn't really get into it until we were like 12. And like, that's like when we started playing instruments, and we want to start a band, because that was like, I don't know, it seemed like the cool thing to do, kind of, you know? And it was just like, oh, like we want to do this stuff. And then that was when, in my memory, that's like when we raided Alex's CD book, because he was like off at college. And I think his big CD book was either already imported onto the family iTunes, or it was just like at home in his room. And we would just like steal it and like burn the CDs or put it on our iPods and like share it with. And that's like when we started making friends at school who were also into this music. And we're like, oh, and we got into whatever, all the Rev stuff through that. And just like started like get like actually into hardcore, while also being really into like, you know, the whatever, Taking Back Sunday, because we saw them open for Blink, and like Newfound Glory, and these bands that were like mainstream but kind of not. and like balancing both weird worlds at the same time and not understanding that there was much of a difference, you know, and then just like, I don't know, just kind of like went from there, I feel like.
And also like both worlds are ultimately like very much connected, you know, and like these were, you know, like even that mainstream, you know, like Newfound Glory coming out of Shai Hulud, and you know, like it felt like I remember Shai Hulud playing like Who's Emma in Toronto and playing like Linko in Montreal, and seeing those shows and seeing Chad singing for them. And then, you know, fast forward a couple of years and Newfound Glory's big, but like it all does connect back weirdly.
Yeah. And it's like, we weren't making the connections at the time, you know, like it was just all like, oh, we like this music and whatever. And like looking back, like now I understand it obviously, but it was just like, here's stuff that is like popular that like we can make friends with school over and we like it at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, and here's the stuff like from Alex's CD book that's like, I don't know, weird hidden gems that we're like using to, I don't know, as like weird cultural capital to like, I don't know, introduce like other people into, and like finding other people in middle school who are into the Misfits and be like, oh, have you heard Minor Threat? And then like building friendships on that and then like sharing up music that way. It was just, I don't know.
Yeah. And at that point too, like I was like not that like it really went away, but like I was just a total hardcore nerd, right? So like this is when we're like, again, like this is like we're 18, 19, like the closest
and I'd like to add, you were a total dick to us.
Well, I'd like to add that most likely it was deserved.
One of my favorite things is in our middle school you do an 8th grade survey and they give it back to you when you're a senior in high school. And Alex's time capsule survey was like, things I hate the most, my little brothers. and that was when Alex was like full on HC, and we were just like, oh, what's this like thing you wrote on your backpack, Alex? What's like Gorilla Biscuits? And he's like, you're a loser, I'm not going to tell you, like stuff like that, you know?
I see it in my kids now. I see that, and it's hard to see. It's hard.
It's a big age. First off, we're 7 years apart, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big age difference, right? And it was also like I wanted my own thing, right? And it was like I knew if they were going to get into it, then I'm babysitting them at a show. Okay.
Yeah, so that's Alex refused to take us to shows for years.
That too. Because I was gonna have to babysit them. Right? Like I can't hang out and mosh and do whatever. And
but it was weird because you were selective about it. Like Alex took us to Posse Numbers 99 and then wouldn't take us like that was when we were 9 years old. That's the first time I remember seeing a Bad Brains shirt. And like I was like taking notes of all this stuff, but it's like I didn't really know what it was. And then when we were really into it, like the next couple of years, Alex was like, no, I'm not taking you. I don't care. Like I'm not gonna sit around and watch you. And we're like, but we want to see like whatever. We want to see the show. And Alex like, no.
I think it was also as Posse Numbers was getting increasingly negative too, though, right? Like, maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, there's that part too. Things got kind of aggressive.
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and
you took us to the two most aggressive fests.
He only let us see certain sets at the last 105. He let us come to
hold on. All right, hold on. In my defense, you guys, the one time anything remotely near happened to either one of you at a show I was at with you, I lost my cool and picked a kid up by his throat and almost murdered him. What do you think I'm going to do at these events with these? It would have been worse. So it was better for everyone.
Yeah,
I understand.
We didn't know. Obviously, you knew something might have happened at that point, but we didn't know. So we were just thought our older brother was an asshole.
But I wanted to see Mental, and I didn't get to see them. And like now I'm damaged for the rest of my life.
I skipped Mental to eat Wendy's before, so you don't worry about it.
We got to see Mental twice, I will say, so that's okay.
Wait, so what were acceptable bands if Mental wasn't an acceptable band? I was thinking, like, so what were like the bands you were allowed to see that year?
Bands we saw in 2004. Oh, I'll tell you.
Wait, why didn't I let you see? Where did I not let you see Mental play?
Posse Numbers 04. Just because they were probably headlining or something. Bands we saw that year: Justice, Iron Boots, Cold World, Fuck, I forget who else.
Wait. Was this the one that was at the zoo?
At the
that
zoo.
got shut down? Oh, okay.
That didn't get shut down.
It should have.
Okay.
It probably should have. Yeah.
I was right.
Yeah, you were right. I can't remember what other bands we saw now that I'm thinking about it.
We were 05. We saw all the bands that we saw are on YouTube, I think, because I filmed a lot of them.
Someone stole Ben's tapes and put them on YouTube.
I didn't steal them. I posted them on some, because it was pre-YouTube. I posted them on like the Bridge 9 board pre-YouTube, and somebody else uploaded them. So if you look up like the War Hungry or the Justice, or I don't think the Cold, a few other sets. I think
Line of Judah.
Judah. Yeah, a few others.
Yeah.
They're fine on YouTube.
So, yeah, but that was like when we were like into hardcore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I remember being really excited that I knew LOJ covered Dag Nasty. And I was like real stoked that I knew what it was.
Well, yeah, because you guys are getting into it like super, super young. And,
yeah.
And, you know, seeing these bands like way before many people were safe to see them.
Yeah. And it was, I mean,
but
yes, sorry, go ahead.
By this point, we were already in a hardcore band that played the pre-Posy show at this small venue in Wilkes-Barre called Coffee Metropolis. So we were already fairly in it already. So
Title Fight was a band
years in this discussion.
Yeah, Title Fight was already banned for like 2-3 years at that point, and we had already started like another band that was specifically like our Lockin' Out style hardcore band.
It's funny how Lockin' Out was just, you know, once again, like another cultural shift in hardcore, where pre-Lockin' Out, there was, you know, this sort of like one worldview within hardcore. And especially, I guess, coming out of the 90s, like you were saying, Wilkes-Barre was like a capital of this kind of like vibe, but like it was a very political scene and very different from sort of the Locking Out aesthetic. Not that Locking Out was sort of like anti-politics, but at the same time, Locking Out was like so pro aesthetics.
It was anti-knowing anything.
It was except about punk and hardcore.
It was anti-reading anything that wasn't a zine.
Yeah. No, it's weird because I got into like the stuff that I like reading now through hearing that like, oh, Justice telling us that like on Mental Tour, AJ was reading Infinite Jest.
AJ's a different breed.
Yes, but AJ is like, you know, part of that scene. Well, like Stop and Think is proto Locking Out, you know, like.
Yeah, and Sammy Reese too. Like Sammy was always writing and reading and, you know, talking about that kind of stuff. So,
but that wasn't the aesthetic. That wasn't the image that was put out.
No,
you know what I mean? Like,
well, no, it was not.
Well, I don't know. Like that being said, there was also like the fact that this was like way before the hipster sort of commodification of zine culture. Like this was like it was a vibrant zine culture that was also around the Locking Out stuff, right? Like,
I mean, I'll put those first few, like those couple trumbles that Sammy and Owen did, Sammy Reese and Owen Black. I'll put those up against any periodical of any. They were so funny.
Yeah,
I read Locking Out #1 fanzine and still laugh out loud.
Yeah, yeah, and the other Cooches and CC's, I guess periphery Locking Out people, but Cooch and CC's like unauthorized guide to unreleased New York hardcore demos.
Oh yeah.
That thing's incredible. Like that's honestly, I put that up there as one of my favorite novels of all time. Like the times I've read that thing.
That's where. Isn't that where Cooch is like pro gatekeeping the recording that he has of Knockdown?
Yeah, that's well, they'd mentioned that he has the recording of Knockdown.
Yeah, how you like wait in Florida to get it forever. It's like, and that's why you can understand why I'm not going to share it with anybody.
Yes. That was also the vibe then too, is like just being so deep head about punk and hardcore, but like not even like what was necessarily considered canon good in punk and hardcore. Like it was like just stuff that you liked, or maybe even stuff that you didn't like. You just liked the vibe of it.
It made it a really interesting era to like actually come up in and like come of age in, because it's like mental, like covering Our Gang intro at like 125.03 is like so irrelevant, but it made me be like, what is this song? And like track it down and then have like multiple Our Gang demos and the WNYU set on my iPod. It's like, this is completely unnecessary, but it's like, that was just presented as like the normal way that you got into it, and kind of like romanticizing, like fetishizing like the obscure, and being like, you know, like, oh, you, if you're into like this stuff, it's cool, but if you're into this stuff, then we know that you're real. And like taking that really to heart and being like, okay, I gotta find like the deep cut stuff to like prove that I'm down, you know?
Yeah, it was the demo's better. The book is better, the demo's better.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of, or sort of maybe the end of the sort of thing where you could commodify information, because now we're in a period where this information is pretty much available to everyone except for the knockdown recording that Cooch is holding on to. But like for the most part, like we can all hear Argan.
That leaked a little bit, you know?
That's true.
So,
yeah. I guess everything does leak eventually.
Oh, I got it.
I remember I remember hearing a certain member of Knife Fight playing it for us back then too. So it's on the West Coast as well. But I you know, like it just felt like that was the moment where, yeah, like you're saying, you had to dig as deep as possible and be into like the most obscure of obscure things.
And it was, you're right. I mean, I remember distinctly, and this is, I guess, right, I don't know if it's right at the same time or right before then. This is when I was living in Philly, and Matt DeLong mailed a VHS recording of Breakdown.
This is a legendary story.
Matt DeLong emailed a VHS recording of, we had heard about it, the Breakdown Tompkins Square Park video, right? He mailed it to George Hirsch from Blacklisted. And it was like basically instructed that like me, Gary Decker, and George were to watch it together. And we went there. We went to George's house. We got pizza. We sat down. We watched it, and like we just sat in silence for like an hour, and then rewound it and finally started discussing it. And then before we even got it, Gary, Damian, I don't know if you know Gary at all, but like he drew an image of what he thought it would be. And it was a radioactive dinosaur moshing just in public. And we were like, you're pretty much right.
Yeah.
But like that was that time, right? Where it was like the harder it was to find something, the more you were going to like it, almost like no matter what. So because like now
you had to.
Yeah, because like now, like I know like the Tompkins Square Park videos, like you can watch it. I mean, I don't know how many times I watched it now because it's on YouTube, but like at that time it was like you had to dig for it, and you were praying it was remotely near what you thought it was. And when you see it and it exceeds that, like after digging that hard, like instead of just like hitting play, I don't know, there was something where it was just like it just motivated you to like want to dig for more stuff and like watch more things.
I will say though, with punk and hardcore records, not records, I should say, with those videos that were circulating and those tapes that were circulating, because it was so hard to pass this stuff around, and because it required a little bit of effort to pass this sort of stuff around, I find that a lot of this stuff lived up to the hype, because if it had been passed around that much, it was legendary for a reason. You know, specifically the Breakdown video, like when I felt the same way when I finally got to see it. To this day, I watch it. Like, it's still one of the greatest live videos ever in any genre.
Oh,
it's like,
I mean, from Jeff's shirt to
everything. Yeah, just like the way the crowd moshes, like the way Jeff moves on stage, the knee socks, like it's just everything about it.
My favorite part is like you never see any of those guys in any other videos, like like the people that are moshing. So like I could still, in my mind, I'm still like, those people were there for that day and they figured out moshing that day, and that was it. Like they were just like, yeah, this is a nice little New York Sunday. Like
and moved on.
Let me get my Gray's papaya and hit a stage skank.
Yeah. It's funny with you, Ben and Ned, because you know, like I found John Daly when he was on the podcast talked about being a lot younger than his older brother, both his older brothers, and being terrified of punk and being terrified of the fact that his brothers were getting into it, and how that actually kept him away from it for a long time, just because he was fearful of it. Was there any of that sort of stuff, like seeing the moshing, or were you guys just in it from moment one?
I remember the first like of the earlier shows we went to as like a teenager. I think Rifkin brought us to at Metro, because this is probably around no, Alex is probably already living away in Philly. And I remember seeing like moshing and kind of actually taking it in for the first time. I don't remember who was playing. This must have been a Disclosure show or something. I remember feeling not scared, but just weirded out. Like how does everybody here know what to do? It's kind of this weird synchronized thing that's going on. Because before that, Alex was kind of feeding us more. He was definitely feeding us hardcore, but a lot at that time we were definitely more into melodic stuff. The Blink-182, Descendants. I remember going to a record store and Alex making me buy a Punk Bites compilation, I think it was called.
Yeah. Does that have 30-Foot Fall? The Kids of Junior High Will Unite?
I think it does.
That song is amazing. That song's a classic. I was at Matty Matheson's house shooting a video for Vice, and I just went. He was like, some guy offered me like $300 for all my 7-inches. I think I want to sell them. And I'm like, I will pull out $300 in your records in 2 minutes. Don't sell them to him. First record I pull out is a Happy Mondays test press. And then the second record I pull out is like this 30-Foot Fall 7-inch that I've wanted forever. And anyway, he ended up not selling his records. He luckily held on to them, but he did give me that 30-Foot Fall Kids of Junior High Unite 7-inch.
I like that the Matty Matheson impression in Canada must be the same as the Rifkin impression in Wilkes-Barre. It's the same voice.
It's the same voice.
It's the same. We all do it. You know, it's like one of those things that everyone's got the Matty impression from back in the day. We're just lucky that it became culturally relevant for everyone.
Yes, it did.
That was a blessing.
Yeah.
How about you, Dad? Were you scared of it at all, or is it all just?
I was more scared than I wanted to admit, because I think like having like some sort of awareness of it and some like, you know, knowledge of it, I was like, I wanted to like mosh really. Well, first off, Alex told me I wasn't allowed to mosh. Alex was like, because
I don't remember that.
Yeah, like going back to Alex's like protective nature, he was like, if you mosh and you get hurt, I'm gonna have to drive home from Philly and beat up whoever hit you, so you're not allowed to mosh. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I obeyed it for a long time, but I was also like kind of scared of it, because it's like I would like try to put on like a tough front of like going to a show and being like, yeah, like this is cool, I know what this is, and then being like, this is like kind of above my pay grade, you know? Because I was like 12 and 13, and like at the time in Wilkes-Barre, up until 2005, the shows were like very adult, you know, it like there wasn't like a big young, it felt as a 13-year-old, it felt like there weren't a lot of other young people there. It was like early 20-year-olds, and when you're 12, that's a huge age gap. And it's like, even though I probably knew most of the people through Alex, there was still a lot of random people going to shows in Wilkes-Barre at that time, and it was just like it was kind of terrifying, you know. And like I feel
like my age group had like a big presence like at punk and hardcore shows, right? Like there was a lot of us, and we all kind of went to college at the same time, or got jobs or went wherever. So like people
I was gonna say the people that stayed home were like Bob Mack, Dan Mills,
and like Chris Nace, and like the Nanacoke dudes who are like, they're like some of my very, very dear friends, but they are also could be very intimidating human beings but you know what I mean? So I could see that easily.
But also those people staying around, like that's the reason why we were able to like do what we were able to do, like that. Because like Bob was still around, like that's why we played shows, and like that's why like people gave us a pass of being a shitty, like Title Fight started when we were 12 years old, and like we just emailed Bob Mack and asked if we could play a show that he had already booked and was like in existence, and like a flyer was ready for. And I was like, hey, can we play the show? And because we were Alex's little brothers, we got a pass, and like we got like put on the show. I think Bob actually said you could play if you cover Warzone or Gorilla Biscuits. That's an important thing, because that's why we try to learn new direction, and we couldn't play it. And so Alex, you taught us The Distance, which is also crazy because we're playing a Gorilla Biscuits B-side, like a Moondog song, and like we don't even know what it is. Which like Alex, like you could play this because it's mostly like open strings. And we're like, okay, cool, we can do this. And like just those people allowing us to do that, and like putting us on shows, and like when we were at shows, talking to us and like being nice to us, like I think that allowed us to kind of, I don't want to say flourish. That's like too, whatever a word, but it's like it allowed us to like continue on and like go to shows and like really, I don't know, get really interested in it because like we felt welcomed and a part of it. And like, that's, I don't know, we were fortunate in that regard. I totally understand that.
It was definitely, you guys definitely had a head start, but I think you kind of sell yourself short saying at 12 years old, you know, you had this lousy, like that at that time, what you guys were putting out was definitely impressive for 12 and 13-year-olds. Like, I mean, the only thing you could, what was the only like young kid band I could think of other than you guys is like the Snobs that was like doing something that was like musically enjoyable.
The Snobs are so good. I looked up to the Snobs so much because they were so much better than us. And Alex, you know, these kids played Posse numbers. What was it, 02 or 03? I think 02. Oh, it was 02 because I was at home base.
Yeah.
Like these kids. Oh, maybe it's 01?
No, it was 02 because it was Father's Day.
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, their dad drove them in an RV. And Alex like bought the 7-inch and I stole the 7-inch from Alex. And I was like, yeah.
I think it's like a release 7-inch, right? From that version. I think it's like the My War release. Or is that the next 7-inch that they did, I think, on My War?
No, it was on My War. I think both 7-inches are on. Were both 7-inches on My War?
Yeah, maybe both are. Maybe both are. But I think that was like one of the release shows too, because I remember that was like their big debut on the East Coast.
Yeah.
As this band. There's like a history of young cool bands in punk too. Like that's the thing is like you guys were following a tradition like goes back to like Red Cross, you know, and like there's like this history of like young kids, and it's like maybe the only genre of music. You'll see it, I guess, in hip hop too, but like where young people getting involved is celebrated and really encouraged. And
I mean, look at Madball.
Yeah, Madball. Yeah.
I mean, I will say that we get a pass because our music was decidedly at the start like unhardcore. You know, like it was like, yeah, we covered like Gorilla Biscuits and stuff, or really we covered Moondog, but like our other songs were just like kind of generic songs that were influenced by like Descendants and stuff, you know. And
that's
like,
hardcore. That's hardcore.
Yeah. It's hardcore, but it was like so much more melodic than the stuff that was going on at the time. And like, yeah, I do take the argumentative stance that like that stuff is hardcore. Like, you know, much to like I don't know,
Scott Vogel's chagrin.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like we were just like young kids playing like melodic music, and I think that's also like a product of coming up in Wilkes-Barre, where a lot of that stuff was kind of just like presented. Like the show that I referenced in '97 that we all went to, Vermicious Knids was, I don't know what kind of band you would call that. 8 Ounce Show was a ska band. Bedford was like a
nerd
pop punk nerd.
Yeah.
Power pop. I don't know.
And
Magnus
then Magnus,
youth group.
Magnus was the first band from Wilkes-Barre to be influenced by Youth Today. So very important. But it's like all these things. And then like all the other stuff happening in Wilkes-Barre at the same time was like, you know, political, emo, screamo, like hardcore, and then like straight up like metallic stuff. All this stuff happening at the same time in the same place and being presented as one kind of a unified underground scene. By the time we got into it, it was definitely more just like capital H hardcore. But we were kind of like a product of Alex showing us what the stuff is and being like, oh, this is like, it's normal for us to play like this kind of more melodic stuff on a show. Like our first show is with Drug Test, Scraps and Heart Attacks, Blacklisted, and Frostbite. You know, and like all those bands are obviously much more like cohesive.
We had to leave before Frostbite played.
Yep.
Another Alex rule.
Yes. Yep. That was Alex. That was your last show with Frostbite.
Oh, yeah. Let me real quick though. They and I've seen this frequently where these two will downplay what they were doing at that point in time, because I remember distinctly at that show and pretty much every Title Fight show in that time frame, where not only me but like everybody else who was there, whether they liked that type of music or not, would be like, this is impressive. Like what they're doing at this age is musically impressive. Like they're very good at their instruments. You can tell they care and they're writing good songs. So like they definitely undersell that a lot. And they were very talented. All of them are really good musicians. And they were at that time. I mean, I remember the day Ned got his bass. It was the first day you got your bass. It was on your birthday. And I was at school and I came home from school and you were playing the bass line to Sugar Hill Gang.
Rapper's Delight.
Yeah, Rapper's Delight. Like the very first day he got his bass. Like that's crazy. So they were very good for their age. And it was like, I remember at that time being like, if they stick with this, this is going to be something cool.
It's
Yeah.
funny
Like, at that
because
age.
a lot of people say the same thing about frostbite.
Nobody says that about frostbite.
No, I
Maybe
got
the
a
Connecticut frostbite.
no, I got a weird thing about frostbite because I remember Matt DeLong telling me he'd rather mosh for frostbite's outburst cover than for fucked up police. So
Whoa.
yeah, so there you go.
I like that. I like that. That's a diss to me, also from at the time one of my very dear friends.
No,
And
it was,
still,
yeah, no. I felt like when I finally got to meet you, I had heard so much about you. Like because I didn't meet you till later on because I didn't really travel like they did
Yeah.
for shows, right? So I
Did
was
you know
not,
him as Albite?
I knew him Fat Alex.
Oh,
yeah. Well,
That's
I
the only place I think that's your nickname, right?
yeah, I met you really, really briefly. You guys played I think it was called the Dungeon in Doylestown, and Phil Leone put the show on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
With
went to the
Blacklisted.
show. Yes. And I went to the show and I watched your set and I was like, this shit is fucking awesome. And I remember watching your set, and afterwards, I didn't I think it was like the first time I knew you were from Toronto, but I don't know if I didn't think like maybe you didn't know those guys. So I think like at the time, the warning was like some 41ing.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
was
like
around that time they'd already kind of moved
Yeah.
on to that
So
part.
like I didn't know like who knew who, and I just
Yeah.
remember I remember buying I bought something. I don't remember what it was. I know I lost it that night. I remember that too. Like it was like maybe a tape or something. And I remember just walking up to you and being like, that was awesome. I really liked it. And that was
that's
it. But
fun.
we didn't really meet.
No,
Like
I
I didn't
think
know your name or anything.
I don't think we. I know because I must have met you in Toronto when Cold World came up and played Toronto, at the skate park at Adrift. I think that was the first time.
Oh, yeah.
I met you. I think it was Iron Age
Oh.
too, right?
Was it? I know it was
Razzle Dazzle?
Razzle Dazzle. That was where we stayed at that girl's mansion.
Yes, and ruined the hookup for every other band. Just ruined it.
Ewan was so pumped at us.
Everyone. There's a house with a pool, an indoor pool. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this story, but there was this woman in Toronto, Alex McDonald, and her mom had this unbelievable house next door to Prince, where Prince lived at the time, and it had an indoor pool. And she would let bands stay there, and it would be like one of those, when you're on tour and you're crashing on people's houses, and then all of a sudden you hit the jackpot one day, and you're staying at like a house that's like nicer than a hotel somehow, and like how did this happen?
It was insane. I've never seen a house like this.
And what did you do? What did you do, Alex?
We just we were having fun. I don't know, man. People.
Someone peed in the pool. Someone stood on the outside of the pool and peed into the pool.
I guess it's genetic.
They threw a pizza into the pool. I don't know if that's before, after the
There's a lot more than pizzas, and I think somebody pushed
a limo.
That was the reunion.
Limo bus.
No, the limo bus was in Montreal for New Year's.
Was that? Yeah.
And they show up and they're all bloody because they've been having wrestling match in the back of the limo.
We beat the hell out of each other. The driver got back and he was like, "You're never allowed to rent it." I'm still blacklisted from that company. Like when we got married, I couldn't rent from them. Like Allie called up and they're like, "What's the name?" She's like, "Russin." And the guy's like, "Oh, sorry."
That was the thing about Cold World is it was like, and it was that time period too. It was like Iron Age, Cold World, and Sexvid, and there's just like a bunch of bands that were just like wild, and it was like a real fun moment in hardcore.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that was. That was when we started becoming friends. That was definitely it. Like that time. Yeah. That was a whole weekend with Razzle Dazzle, I think, like all in Canada.
There was that. Yeah, you guys came up for that, but then we also did like a weekend with you guys when we did like the Cro-Mags reunion with Gut Instinct, and then we did like Mac Rock Fest together.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Where there was that fight during our set, and Party Boy started playing Smoke on the Water during the fight, and it was James Hogan was fighting some dude, and he started laughing in the middle of the fight and walked away, and it stopped the fight because Party Boys dan dan dan.
It was
a perfect move.
It was the weirdest festival. It was inside like a giant Chuck E. Cheese type thing, and it was like government warning, Cold World, Blacklisted. God, I'm trying to remember who else played. It was like a wild lineup.
Painted Black play? Did
Painted Black might have played too, but there were like children's playground areas, ball pits, all sorts of weird stuff all around.
Captain D's. I've played there many times with Cold World.
I remember all this stuff from seeing the shows listed on your MySpace.
Oh wow, yeah.
So what is it like though when this generation takes off and there's like, I imagine a lot of the bands kind of stopped around that time, or is there like sort of a changeover where, you know, you guys are kind of existing from this older time period as a younger band, but you know, eventually you kind of wind up with this whole new scene cropping up around you.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like in that time period? Like when all the bands took off, was it kind of grim in terms of bands playing around?
In Wilkes-Barre?
Yeah.
It was kind of weird. I remember, because the timeline as I remember it is like, we are coming up as like teenagers. We're making like a couple friends that are our own age, a little bit older. And there's like a couple bands that are kind of like our age, a little older. We're kind of like, you know, we're like the local openers. And then Posse Numbers ends around the same time that like everybody is like moved away. And it kind of felt like the entire scene that was like really successful and had been built up for like, you know, 10, 15 years was left to a bunch of 15-year-olds. And it was like, I remember feeling like very like salty about it, because I was like, man, like we need help around here. And we're like young, we don't know what to do. And like everybody that knew what to do left. And so it was like, it took like a couple of years for us to figure out what we were doing. But then it was like, it was a really productive time in the scene. It was just like a lot of cool, like young kids that we came up with that we kind of like, I don't know, pulled in from school. We're like, just like met people through like, I don't know, at the lunch table who were like, had similar interests, or that we like, some of our friends who we were just like friends with forever, who we just like got everybody into the same stuff, it felt like. And we were just like all like one little kid scene. And then we all kind of like came up together and like figured out actually how to book shows. Everybody was starting bands. We were like figuring out how to release records and stuff. And then it felt like
at that time.
Yeah, we illegally opened a venue. We there was a pizza place that we all frequented that was like 3 blocks away from our parents' house. And there was an open storefront in that complex, in the little shopping mall. And for whatever reason, they just left the door open. So this was the summer of 2004, Ben? 2005? 2005?
Yeah.
And we would just, first off, we went in and we like took a TV and video games in there, and we would just hang out and play video games in this like empty storefront. And then for whatever reason, we were like, oh, we'll just have shows in here. And we built a stage in this existing building without talking to anybody.
No, I think we had permission at that point.
I thought we were just still illegal at that point. And then we went to the pizza place. We're like, hey, we want to have shows here. I'm like, cool. And then we had a summer
somehow. How did we pay? I don't even know how we paid rent.
We didn't. I don't know.
Did like Coalesce played there?
Coalesce was the first show.
Was Coalesce before the stage. They played on the floor.
Yeah. And mind you, last time Coalesce played there is when they threw the drums into the crowd at the Wilkes-Barre Fest.
At Wilkes-Barre Fest.
Yeah, which is a pretty legendary story.
Yeah.
And then the second time was a venue my 15-year-old brothers had built illegally, apparently.
It was called The Future. Who else played The Future?
Mental,
More to Pride played, I think it was the last show.
Oh, yeah.
Renee Hartfelt played there.
Yeah, Renee Hartfelt played.
Solid venue.
Title Fight played a couple times. That was like the summer that Title Fight popped off. And I remember like that was the first time that we played, and like random kids from our school came out, and it was like, oh, this is like a thing now. But yeah, basically it like felt like we find like that was the start of like us building it up. And then like kind of like 2008, 2009, when like we actually started touring and like doing everything, it felt like we had successfully like rebuilt what we had, like what was there before, kind of, in a way, you know, which is like probably a misconception. Like,
no, it's not. As somebody who saw both parts of it, it's not. Like, it was pretty remarkable, like, to see like the up and down.
But
like,
I'm just saying,
it was. I mean, it wasn't just you guys. You had plenty of help. Like, it was like,
oh yeah,
it was your group, undoubtedly.
Yeah. But also, like, I'm saying that there was plenty of rough shows in Wilkes-Barre before 2005. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a small town, but I mean, the craziest part about Wilkes-Barre is we always had at least 2 venues until, I mean, now we have kind of one, but we always had 2 venues for a small area, and you guys had that one. So like the fact
there was 3 venues at that point.
Yeah, there was definitely lulls, but like it was down for a while, and like when I remember like coming back, and there was points where it was like, oh, this feels very, very similar. Like, it feels like it was still like, now we're like back to like 150, 200 kids pretty much every show, you know.
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, I'd say like 75, but that's like crazy for Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah, but not every show, but like there was a lot of shows with 150, 200. Yeah, and a big show, you'd get a lot of kids.
By the time we started Redwood, yeah, it was definitely fun.
Well, Redwood was crazy.
Yeah,
they started another venue afterwards. So this is, at this point, Title Fight was pretty established.
Yeah,
and this was an almost legal venue.
It was legal. We had insurance and everything.
Yeah, and they started this place, and it was crazy. And they didn't make a penny off of it. It was Title Fight dumped pretty much all their money into it just to do it, just to have a place for shows. Because it was right after. Was Cafe Metropolis closed at this point?
Yeah, that's why we started it.
Yeah, so Cafe Metropolis, which is like the local spot that has been around since, you know, right before, like right when I started going to shows, like right when it opened up.
It's like the CBGBs of Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah.
Well, no, but it's wild how, because Wilkes-Barre is not huge from my understanding, but like it's amazing how it has consistently been like one of the major places on the East Coast for bands and shows for years.
Yeah,
right? Like since the 90s.
Yeah. I listened to Nick's podcast with you, and he mentioned something about like I don't think that because its location has anything to do with it. And Nick and I have talked about it a lot. Like, I completely disagree that I think the location is all of the reason for a few reasons though, but not just because it's like 2 hours from New York or 2 hours from Philly. It's also because like Wilkes-Barre is within like an 8-hour drive of so many places, right? So you play here and you have a bigger band, and you're going to get a lot of people coming up to see a show. That's one thing. Two is that there was always a good amount of kids going to shows, and we always kind of knew like you couldn't really be picky, right? So like if you had a show, it was like, okay, there's a show, enjoy the show, go to it. And there's a good chance it's going to be very, a lot of different genres, like in one show. Like you might see like a roll on the floor screamo band playing with like a beatdown band or something like that, and nobody bats an eyelash.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it attractive to bands that are touring too. It's like, oh, you play this city, it doesn't really matter what you play like, or what you sound like rather. You're going to have a decent crowd and you're going to have people into it. And I think that has a lot to do with Wilkes-Barre kind of finding its own thing. And then that permeates into the sounds. Like we all kind of have sounds that were very different than a lot of other bands, right? Like, so Cold World comes up. And when we came up, like our big thing was like, I like the Get Up Kids as much as I like, like Life of Agony and Fury of Five and stuff like that, and Madball. Like, I like all that stuff a lot. And it was Nick and me just being like, we want to make something that kind of crosses these genres that we all like, and like do it in our way where it's this music coming through our vehicle, right? And I feel like we did that pretty well. And I feel like Title Fight did that in a very successful way too, where like they want to take all of the stuff that they listen to, where it's a bunch of different like crazy stuff, and put it through their vehicle. And like you get these very unique sounds coming out from all these different sources. You're just filtering them through, whatever you're putting it out through, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think also Cold World was the band that kind of gave permission to be weird. Like when No Warning put out, like I talk about this a lot, when No Warning put out the second record with all the singing on it,
yeah,
it just didn't land. Kids kind of rejected it. What Cold World did was, like, the songs where you sing on them, it was like a band saying, like, it's okay to bring all this stuff into what you're doing in a way that it was like accepted, unlike that No Warning record had been.
Yeah, I remember too when like people started hearing that, like, because the first one was the Ice Girl 7-inch where I sing on.
Yeah.
And I remember getting more people asking about me singing than about having songs with samples on them.
Yeah.
Like, are you really singing? I'm like, yeah, that's kind of, people sing in music. It's not that weird. And we're definitely not the first hardcore band to do it. I mean, Ben sings on the first No Warning 7-inch, right? Like, not even like I'm talking modern too. Like Ben sings on that, right? Like Blood for Blood, there's plenty of singing and stuff like that. Like, I mean, we clearly ripped off Biohazard, who didn't really scream at all. Like,
I think a more interesting thing about you singing in Cold World is the fact that you're playing guitar and singing while Dan is the standalone singer.
Yeah,
it's like kind of weird because like
that was Blood for Blood too, though, right? Like they had that kind of vibe. It's so hard, that record, and then when your singing comes in, it somehow maintains that hardness, but has this. It was like, I remember it was jarring. I was driving in Bob Shed's car, and we're in L.A. or somewhere in Los Angeles area, driving around, and he put on a CD of the Cold World 7-inch of Ice Girls. And it was just, remember hearing that, being like, what the hell is this? Just like, it blew my mind, and like, yeah, the samples also were jarring, but like your vocals, it just like immediately was like, oh, this is amazing. This is something that's super awesome. And I kind of look at Cold World as being this band that, like, I tried to get you guys signed to a label at one point, even, but there was like, I feel like there's this band that had like, I don't want to say so much potential, because I think you've done so much with it, but like at the same time, like I think it'd be interesting to see in a different reality where it would have gone.
I think a lot of the trajectory of modern hardcore is from Cold World.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a lot of that.
It's like, I don't think you have, like, I love Trapped Under Ice, but I don't see Trapped Under Ice exploding the way they did without Cold World kind of setting the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think Cold World is also like one of the more, maybe the most popular bands in hardcore at the time, but Trapped Under Ice definitely like went beyond that, and it's like, I think that ability kind of like comes from the era of whatever, being able to disseminate information at like a much wider range, but also because it's like people were primed from it and like interested in heavy music again because of Cold World.
I mean, you gotta remember, like, Planet Mental came out and people were like, this isn't a hardcore record, because it was like,
people were
like
pissed.
that was too weird for hardcore at that time. And like, then we're out there doing whatever the hell we're doing. So I could see, it definitely like advanced things pretty far, and like, I shouldn't say that. It definitely was different and envelope pushing in a way. And it was, we had to have thick skin to do it, because the whole goal of it was, in my mind, was I don't want to make music where I don't want to make any middle of the road. I don't want to make, they're fine music. I want to make, I hate it or I love it.
Yeah.
And I think we did that pretty well. Like, people definitely hated it, which was fine.
It's weird though how it was kind of like, I remember, because I love Cold World from maybe not the beginning, like that Walk All Night 7-inch I thought was cool, but like definitely Ice Girls, I was like all in. And I remember for like the first couple years, it was like this weird uphill battle, but then there was this moment where, and the embracing comes from almost like the record collector, Killed by Death, Finnish hardcore fan side of hardcore first, I found. Like I remember like being on like one of these secret record collector message boards, and all of a sudden everyone's into Coal World. And it was just like, yeah, it felt like you guys put like drove a lot of people away in the beginning, but then everyone kind of just came back. And like you said, Ned, I think over the years it's just been interesting to see how much of hardcore has kind of just followed that direction.
Yeah. And I think that also that reaction is like how a lot of the modern bands that are popular now have started, where it's like a band like Turnstile, for example, it's like they play Not Dead Yet, and it's like all like the, you know, the most punk fans are there and like, oh, this is cool. And like hardcore fans are there and like, this is cool. And then it's just kind of like, it in order for something to succeed, it has to have like everybody behind it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's like there are very few unifying bands like that. And I don't know why it's like the combination of like very hard New York hardcore influence with like melodic singing and like catchy almost hooks over it. It's like I don't know, it does something to the people.
Yeah, and I think you know, credit where it's due. I think a lot of the New York hardcore, I don't know, it's like there obviously New York hardcore's been a thing in hardcore forever, but I think like the No Warning, like they were almost like the Rolling Stones to blues music, to New York hardcore in a way.
Yeah.
And turned it into something kind of different. And I think Coal World kind of like does that, but like to a different degree, and also having just this like unbeatable hip hop kind of referencing and knowledge behind it too, where it doesn't feel appropriative as much as it feels like it's actually coming from like a love of the culture. I think makes it something really special, unlike a lot of bands doing that sound.
Yeah.
I think a lot about Coal World. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I think a lot about, and also Title Fight too, because I think Title Fight, like you said, Alex, but in a different way, ushers in this complete change in hardcore where there's like, you know, there's wave after wave of bands that are like, you know, people describe bands to me all the time as Title Fight ripoff bands. Oh, they're like a Title Fight ripoff band, like where there's a whole subgenre of bands, you know, trying to get that sound or trying to be that sound.
Yeah. I think about it like just the sheer volume of people that are into punk or hardcore now. And I mean, however you want to quantify that with, you know, via internet or actually going to shows, which I think is two very different things at the moment, you know, because you could pretty much consider yourself a hardcore kid and not go to a show at all, like because of YouTube and Reddit and everything. But I like with it's insane how many people are into like punk and hardcore now. Like you can walk down the street and see somebody wearing any hardcore shirt, and it's not weird at this point. Like even around here, and every time I think of it, I'm like, and of course it's I harken back to these guys because it's, you know, point of pride and everything. But I'm like, I'm always thinking like, where would this be without them? Like, where would all of this be like without Title Fight? Because it's not just like the music itself, but it was like I can't think of a band who got to the level of where they were at, like with a fan base and with like, you know, some critical acclaim with like some huge websites and stuff, who have that kind of music that's clearly like catchy and was on the like radio stations and stuff that fully embraced actual hardcore. Like Ned's wearing Free Spirit, like a Free Spirit shirt, and like not just because like it's his friend's band, but because like you know he didn't want to wear his straight ahead shirt or something that day. Like I can't think of it ever existing to that level.
Yeah, no, not in that sort of like critical sphere, certainly.
Yeah, and like, you know, the kids who dig into it, then they start getting into hardcore. So it's like, how much of like what is happening now, like, can you attribute to that? Like, I mean, even like you could go as far as like where would, like, I mean, you know, they're incredible, and I think they deserve every ounce of their own success. But like, where is a band like Turnstile if Title Fight didn't exist first?
Well, I think that's the thing, is like, this is a amazing moment where we have, you know, on one level you've got a band like Title Fight, on another level you've got like My Chemical Romance, who also came out of these sort of basement show situations in the same area, and to see how much of music is directly connected back to like punk and hardcore, but like in a way that yeah, like what would this era be like if we didn't have the title fight breakthrough, if you didn't have whatever comes next in terms of the critical sphere. It's interesting to look at like how many people that were punk and hardcore kids in the 90s that in the early 2000s started working at these places like Noisy, like Pitchfork and things like that, and then started hiring other punk and hardcore kids afterwards. So it's amazing how much of this sort of like popular sphere now, or not popular, critical sphere now, is populated by people that get punk and hardcore references. And just to see how much of it permeates popular culture, where you watch a TV show like This Fool and you've got guys rocking hardcore shirts on that show. You've got references to it on The Bear. Like
Yeah.
we've seen like sort of this crossover mainstreamification of punk and hardcore, where it's still also though a secret code. Like it's not like, you know, when you're ever around normal people and you try and bring this stuff up, it's amazing when you realize how small this world still is. But it's fascinating to kind of look at this period we're in, and yeah, certainly it's, you know, title fight, but then also right back to Cold World and Frostbite. I think, you know, right back to Magnus, and then
Yeah.
you know, back before that, like it just, I don't know. I love the linear nature of it too.
Yeah, it's cool. And I mean, I think a lot of people recognize it too, which I is really nice to see. Like a lot more people recognize, like I feel like a lot of these things often go unrecognized, like where we kind of have to do the digging, like, you know, the people who are involved in it. I mean, you think about like, you know, like someone like those old New York hardcore dudes who will be like, you know, I was around for this, you weren't, sort of stuff. Like they have to kind of self-proclaim it. Whereas I think like right now, like a lot of these like younger kids, like they proclaim it for you almost. Like these kids, like I mean, I think too. So Ben plays drums with Citizen, and I was talking to Matt, the singer of Citizen. He was telling me how he gets more questions about Title Fight than he does about Citizen when he's out like talking to fans and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, no,
And I'm
like
like, that's really cool.
yeah, Title Fight is one of the most requested bands to come on this podcast. Like getting you guys on this podcast has been something people have been writing about forever, and you know, it's yeah, like it's you know, and getting to play with you, the guys at the Cro-Mags. Was it us and the Cro-Mags at the Vans house, or just you guys and us, right, at the House of
Yeah,
Vans?
just
And
the
hop
Two of
and
us.
hop
Hustle.
along.
Oh, Hop Along played too. That was the third.
Yeah.
That's right. It was yeah, it was wild there to kind of like witness like this sort of like shift had happened, and being like, oh man. And like you said earlier on, like when Alex's generation had moved on and you guys were left with the scene locally, and it's like, what are you going to do? But I think that's why punk and hardcore is so awesome, is because eventually everyone's going to age out of being the zeitgeist of whatever stage they're at in their band, and another wave of kids have to step in there. And witnessing that changeover in that wave, I think for a lot of people in punk and hardcore, it can become terrifying and distressing, but also at the same time, it's like that's what makes this thing special and keeps renewing it, and that's why it's still here.
And humbling,
Yeah, and humbling too. Yeah, and like,
you know.
and maybe like, not that you have to move on and stop liking what you like and stop being in your band or whatever, but at the same time, like maybe you do have to realize there's going to be another wave of kids that's going to have different values and different influences, and they're going to be the ones that need to run with it.
But that's the only way this thing keeps going, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Without that and without recognizing like this is a young person's game.
Yeah.
Like you could still love it and be into it, but like, man, let some kids carry the torch for a little bit.
Do you guys feel that though? Do you guys feel how the impact that Title Fight had?
I do.
Wet.
Like, I mean, like, is that something you can perceive, or is it all like something that's weird when you hear people talk about it?
I feel like it's a different perception from being in the band. I don't know. What do you think, Ned? I think it's hard to kind of put yourself outside the box. Although I mean, I perceive it in the way that we see, you know, kids come up to us, ask us questions at whatever shows we're playing about Title Fight. We obviously have demand on the internet of people constantly, again, asking us questions or wondering when X is going to happen or how this happened. And that's the only way I really perceive it. But I definitely acknowledge that I know that the demand is there, and I I'm grateful for it. But for reasons, like, I don't know, playing so many years with sorry, I lost my train of thought. But
No
I was
problem.
just saying that this part could be edited out. But
No, this stays in.
that's fine.
More
But no, I was just trying to make the connection to being grateful for people like Alex and our generation before us for paving the way for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to sit around and like assess other things and look at other bands and things and be like, oh, I am responsible for this, or like I am this wouldn't have happened without me, because like I don't know.
I do
gonna,
that for you. I don't mind doing it.
You're gonna go down some sort of rotten path, regardless if it's like a positive or a negative thing that you're thinking about the thing.
Yeah, I don't even mean like that in terms of like saying like whether the cause and effect would be there.
Yeah,
I mean just the fact that like you play in this band and now you guys have stepped away for a few years. But I don't think you get to, and I find this time and time again on this podcast talking to people that are in these bands that had massive fucking impacts on all of well, certainly me, but like people in this scene, in this world, and you just can't really perceive it while you're in it. And now I think being separated from it for a few years, I was wondering if it's easier to kind of like take it all in.
It's I don't think it's easier, honestly. It's like certain things, yeah, there's like whatever kind of metrics that we have now to measure it, that it's like you could say, oh, like these numbers have grown, these amount of records have sold, and now it's like the thing that you measure by. It's like this many more people have listened on Spotify, but it's like I'm first off, I'm always skeptical of that, just because like I don't care and I don't want to like, I don't know, I'm not buying into the complete like, I don't know, analytic side of that kind of like of something that I think should be like personal and like, and I don't know, intimate. Mm-hmm. But also on top of that, it's like I'm just never gonna think of myself like in that regard, like. And it's weird because we had like kind of a reckoning recently, because it was like the 10-year anniversary of our second record, and like people were saying all this kind of stuff, and like people throwing around the word like whatever classic and stuff, and it's like no, that is reserved for like the bands that we have already discussed on the podcast. It's like when I met Ian MacKaye, like it took me 30 minutes to work up the courage to go talk to him, because like he has had such a profound impact on my life. And it's like I legit was like I'm not starstruck, because like one of the important things that hardcore has taught me is like everybody is on the even playing field. It's like the generic thing that you say, but it's like, yeah, like I truly do believe that. But it's like seeing him, it's like, man, it took me a minute to work up the courage to be like, I really like love your bands, because like his bands really do mean that much to me. And it's like, to me, those bands are always going to be on another level than anything that I've done, and it's like, and now it's weird because the perception has been thrown, like it's other people's perception is like, oh, this record is like a classic, or it's like, a must listen to record if you're getting into punk. And it's like, I'm never going to agree with that, because to me, it's just like, this is the music that 4 kids from, rural Pennsylvania made. And it's like, it's just like the fun that we had and like the experiences that we had and the emotions that we put out. And it's like, that's just what it is.
We didn't grow up with cows in our yard. It's not that rural, but
we grew up like 30 minutes away from where people grow up with cows in their yard.
Yeah, but there's a riot girl scene, so you're definitely not necessarily like the most
That's
rural.
true.
It's more suburban than rural, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, it's out there, and it's like, I just think of it as like something that I'm happy that I was able to do, and it's like, I don't know. That's just like my weird kind of like attempt to like not inflate my ego or something, but it's just like I can't think of it in the way that other people perceive it, because then I'm gonna like break my brain or something, and I don't want to do that.
And I think that's the great thing that punk and hardcore gives us is sort of this escape hatch from society in a way where we can kind of look at it from this sort of outside place where you realize all of it's bullshit and it's all just stuff we put on to people. Like at the end of the day, Ian MacKaye's just like a guy, but we've kind of like, because we're engaged by the art that he's made over the years and the stuff he said, you elevate these people. And like, I think that's the that's the best thing about punk and hardcore is that it's always constantly people being like, no, 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 no. It's all edifice. There's nothing
Yeah.
real to it. But we
It's-
still make it. We still put the edifice on people.
Of course. I think to me, it's like the most powerful thing is like it gives power to like the listener, you know, and that's like what I advocate for, because it's not like, I don't think Title Fight or Cold World or anything like.
You there? He was gonna say that he hates it all.
He was going to slam it. It was going to be the twist at the end of the episode.
I think one of the things is, you know, to not, I don't want to put, well, I mean, I guess I could since he's frozen, but put words in Ned's mouth. But with like, I have that point of view for them. Like you can't have it for yourself. It's hard, right? So I see it, and like I said, like I think about this stuff all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about this stuff all the time too, because it's like, you know, like this is weirdly like our religion, you know, in a way. Like this is something where we've chosen this, we've gotten values from this, we've gotten community from this, we've gotten service from this, we've gotten like all the things that people traditionally have gone to religion for, but we filled this void with punk, and you know, we give it power, but like that's the reason it has power. That's why we spend so much time thinking about it, even though we're fucking adults and we could be doing like anything with our time. You know, on a Sunday we could be doing normal stuff like getting ready for sports and all that kind of stuff.
Alex is still doing that.
I know Alex is definitely going to do that. I was ready for that.
I mean, I still have plenty to. I got a lot of research to watch before I start putting some bets in, but no, you're right. It's very funny. It's one of the things I think is really funny is like, so it's like a kind of like the humbling moment almost, which is, so my youngest son, my son is the youngest, he's 6, and he thinks like Turnstile is the absolute coolest thing ever, right?
Yeah.
And he likes Citizen and Glitterer a lot, but like Turnstile is the coolest thing ever. And we went to see Turnstile in DC, and Ben and Ned were there, and he watched Citizen play, and he was like, all right, this is, you know, he's like, it's just Uncle Ben playing drums. And when he watched Turnstile play, it was like watching like Metallica, like up front in person. Like he couldn't have been more in awe with everything. And I was like, well, who's a better drummer? Like Dan or Uncle Ben? And he was just like, Dan. He's like, Uncle Ben's not that good. He's like, he's just my uncle. And I'm like,
that's
so
also the certified truth. Well, is kind of untouchable in the world of hardcore drumming right now.
But you know what I mean? Like you're just an uncle. Like that's all you are. But like that's like how, like what Ned was saying is like when you have like that personal of a view of it, it's kind of hard to relate to like how good Ben is, or like how cool it is to like have 2 uncles that like do this stuff. Or like I couldn't be less cool. I don't know how you are.
Oh, I'm unbelievably cringy. I'm unbelievably cringy. Like they just The only time I impress them with a guest is I had the guy who wrote It's Raining Tacos on the show. And
wait till I tell Oliver that. I listen to that song daily now.
Yeah, that's Perry from Nerf Herder.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You guys cover Title Fight does a Nerf Herder cover, right?
I don't think so.
What song did you cover? What'd you do a cover of?
I was gonna be shocked if you did a Nerf Herder.
Not a Sir.
Not a Sir.
Yeah.
But they kind of, I know why you're saying that. They are part of like that sort of like weird moment in post alternative music where these bands had hits on radio and it was not connected. I get where the confusion, Alex.
Thank you.
I am very rudely going to have to say I have to end early right now, but maybe if we can find another time to continue this chat, or maybe we can schedule a part 2 real soon. But I have to run to the baseball game. Speaking of sports,
Ned just said Wi-Fi shit the bed. Hold on, sorry.
All right. Well, can we adjourn it for today? And let me say this has been awesome, and let's do a part 2 real soon. Let's figure out another time that we can all get together, because thank you for making the time.
Whenever you want,
course.
buddy.
Sounds
Great talking
good.
to you. Hey, Joe Rogan, if you're listening.
Yo, what about Joe Rogan being Gerard Way's cousin?
What?
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. How's that for a start? How's that for a start?
I mean, Rogan Ray Capo episode, right? Like, what does he call you today in that? The children of the future or something like that? Like, that was good.
I think you cut out.
This is going to be a great. I'm glad we waited a year for this.
1 year to the day, and the same technological problem exists for the
Let me see if this helps at all.
You're gonna open a window that'll help your Wi-Fi.
I don't do anything, but
Just take off the tinfoil
I'm gonna
hat.
open the door. I'm opening the door of this room.
You know, they keep talking about this 5G stuff, but it doesn't seem to be really working.
So what did we talk about last time?
We talked about your
Hardcore.
whole career. We talked about your careers. We talked about, I think we had just kind of finished talking about Title Fight. And I finally found the episode because it's nearly 1 year ago to the day that we last all got together. We are all reconvening to finish this episode. And, it's gonna be a monster episode. Since then, I've had Arthur on the podcast, and I feel like I've had a couple other members of Cold World, and I've also had to deal with a lot of people asking me when I was going to have people from Title Fight on the podcast, and having to say, I have an episode that's nearly done with them. Please give me a little bit longer, and I will stick it up.
One more year.
1 more year.
1 more year.
Well, how's your year
I
been?
thought it was like 3 months, like a few months in my head. Not
Yeah.
a year.
Well, by Ned's beer growth, we know it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I've gotten to hang out with you since then, that's even crazier.
And I've hung out with Ned since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got burgers in Toronto. So I feel,
Oh yeah.
Ben, we're due.
I'll be in Toronto soon. I'll hit you up.
All right. We'll go out, we'll hang out, and then we can all talk shit on each other in private too.
Hopefully Pizza's open then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We tried to go to the Pizza and they were shut.
It was closed. Yeah. Crazy.
Thank goodness for A&W. A&W is
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say A&W is the savior for late night vegan eaters across Canada. It's a different company in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
Root beer, right?
The root beer, and the root beer is a different company. There's like 4 companies all under the name A&W, all in the same business that are completely separate, apparently. It's a weird end to this podcast.
This is where we get into fast food conspiracy theories.
It was cool though to play with Cold World. I hadn't seen you guys play live since you guys played in Toronto in like 2014, 15.
Yeah. That was fun. That first show was the reaction was, just the show itself was fun. And then the second show was, I don't know if have you been to TVI in a while since like Dano kind of redid it? It's awesome. Like he did such a killer job with it, but maybe it was in my head because I'm old, but it felt so late that like everything, like it was a cool hang. It was a cool venue. Like the venue, we would have had way more fun at that venue, but it's nowhere near the size of the Monarch. But like it was like on stage, I felt like I was sleeping at points. Like it was a lot.
2 sets in 1 night's a young man's game.
Yeah, that was a terrible. I don't know why. Like in my head, I thought the first show was like a matinee. Like when I agreed to it, and then Dano told me like the week of that it was like he's like no. He's like the second doors for the second show are at 11. I had like a full blown anxiety attack over having to stay up that late. My wife's making fun of me. She's like, "How old are you?"
It's funny watching Cold World have this like resurgence and boost in popularity because there's no band made up of members more reluctant to be in that moment than Cold World.
Yeah. It's a great
Yeah.
point. It's a good way to put it.
All
Yeah,
you guys
look
are
at
pumped.
We
Look-
really know how to seize a moment.
look at Sound and Fury, where you have 3 guitarists and only one of them showed up.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
It's
That's
cool
a
to
long
see.
flight.
Well, that we got the full Cold World. I'm gonna say fucked up inspired 3 guitar lineup.
Yeah,
Very, very.
yeah.
Fucked up's gone down to 2 guitars. You got the 3rd guitar now.
Well,
And,
my favorite part about playing with all 3 of us is Arthur. So like when the reason Arthur started playing was because I couldn't play. So Arthur does like all the solos that I would do. And like instead of instead of ever working out like, all right, like on this song you'll solo and this song I'll solo, we're both just like, we're just gonna solo at the same time, and it might sound cool, it might sound terrible, and we've never adjusted it. Like every time it's just the both, like there's no harmonizing. It's just 2 idiots playing notes.
Alex,
And I have no
you
what?
get to work on your laptop, Zoom?
No, I still this.
You're cutting out a little.
Oh god, all right. Let's see.
Or you could just come over here.
I mean, everybody, it won't install. If we can wait 5 minutes, I'll go to your house, Ben.
yeah, it's 25 minutes.
All right, I'll drive over there.
Like the down quite a bit.
All right.
What are
See
you
you in a
doing?
minute.
What are you doing October 2nd, 2024?
All right, round 3. Welcome back to the show, all you. Alex, you and Ben are now together in one place. We finally beat the fucking internet. Ned, if your internet goes out, you can totally come up here and hang out with me
All right.
up here. And yeah, like as I was saying off air, we did talk a long time last time, but I felt like we didn't give you a chance to wrap up, Ned, in any sort of way. And we kind of ended. We were waxing poetic of on the influence of Title Fight, and you were building up to a big point about Cold World and Title Fight before you froze.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I was saying, because I do have like a vague memory of making a point about like being unable to separate myself from like the stuff that I've made.
Yeah.
And
I think
I can't remember what I was trying to say.
No, but I think that's I think we're all unable to separate ourselves from the stuff we're made, and that's why I'm always fascinated by someone like an Ian Mackay or Jello, I guess too. Like anyone that looked at what they were doing and said, "This is important. I'm going to start archiving this right now."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, Ben is like an archivist. Ben has like taped a bunch of local shows. He had like every Title Fight show from 2003 to 2007 or 8 filmed, and like has all that like ready to go. But that was also more just for like, I don't know, for fun than for like, this is important or something. And I feel like the point that I was trying to make last time, and what I'm trying to like get to and finish my thought on, is like, I don't want to say like Title Fight or Cold World are important, but the thing is, like, to me, it's like Cold World is, one of my all-time favorite bands. Like, unironically, unapologetically, just like genuinely, I think the songs are like impressively good and really cool. And it's like, sometimes it's hard to forget that it's like, that is like my biased opinion or something, but then it's like reinforced, because it's like, we're at a point now where we're like, we're 20 years removed from when they started putting out those records, and there's like young people getting into stuff, and this is like the classic stuff that you have to hear now. It's like, I think it's shown through Cold World headlining like one of the biggest hardcore festivals last year or this year. It's like, and having like a crazy set and being able to play these huge shows to like a bunch of people, and every year like having 1,000, 2,000 people come out and like sing along and like show how important they are, and it's just like, it's hard for me to kind of like sit in that world where it's like, yes, I do see that they are like their importance is like not justified, but like it's proven. And also being like, this is just my older brother's band. And this is just like a thing that I like because it's like, I don't know, it was exciting to hear when I was 15 and it like meant a lot to me. And it's like really important to me, you know? And it's like that kind of inner, like whatever, not turmoil, but like that kind of thing that's like inside of me being like, I love this and it's important to me, but also being like, yeah, I think this like a lot of this stuff that was created in that time from our hometown is like, has gone on to be, I don't know, respected in a way that's like, it's almost hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah. No, because it is like people. As I was telling you guys, I written about having Title Fight on all the time, and with Cold World, I don't know. I kind of came to like a new like revolution. I came with a revelation about Cold World because, like, you know, back then it was not cool, as we talked about, to like Cold World, and now obviously, I think the world's caught up to what Cold World was kind of doing, and Cold World is kind of like a chaotic band, and no one like at any given point, no one really seems like they want to be in it. Like every time like you see the band, everyone's like, you know, and that's not to say that it doesn't kill live and the songs aren't amazing, but I think Cold World is closer to a band like Pavement or like psychedelic horseshit or like all these sort of like DIY bands that were just like had a real loose approach to things than Cold World is to like Sick of It All.
Yeah.
That made
I
Like,
agree.
follow my logic. If you follow my logic on this,
yeah,
I,
not
I get it.
musically. I know, yeah, obviously not musically, but I mean, just like the way that
The way you run the band.
out, where it's like, yeah, I mean, I think the big difference is that like, none of us like, obviously, Cold World wasn't started to make, and I don't know, maybe I don't know, I don't know if Pavement started with the idea to become that as their career, but like Cold World obviously wasn't started to do that as a career. It was just, same reason every hardcore band starts, and then it's just one of those things where we all stayed super close friends. So it's like one of like the things where it's like the impetus to play a show is like every time it's like it will be fun to hang out. One, then here's the other. That's like that's always in the positive column. Then what are the negatives?
and by hang out, it'll be fun to hang out. That means rip on each other.
Oh,
super
terrible.
fucking harshly.
Yeah.
Potentially play fight with each other to the point that someone's bleeding. And just, it's always.
I brought up it like, because Arthur's in Cold World now and, wasn't at, there's things that he did not live through that in that band that are just where I'm like, I don't know how the hell we did that. But like one of like the stupid things was I brought up, I think you might have been in the room when I brought it up, was where Dan and I had a game where whoever wasn't looking got to sock the other person in the ribs as hard as they wanted to while we were playing. And one time Dan hit me so hard, I stopped playing guitar and was like on my knees because I couldn't breathe. So yeah, it's very much a long-term friendship where it's like very brotherly in a way. And, everybody's IQ drops 75 points when we hang out, and it's just the dumbest time together.
But you got to be on your toes too, because they're coming at you from all directions. As you're saying, physically or verbally.
Yeah, verbally it's pretty easily. I'm not really sparring with mental giants in there. I'm fine with that.
But it's also funny because we never got that. Like your crew always was very respectful to us.
No, Dan wasn't.
Dan was like a pool bully, but not
yeah.
He would like dunk us, but he never, and like throw us in bodies of water, but he never like Dan, I don't know.
Hey Dad,
we're doing a podcast. Do you know what a podcast is?
Yeah. This is our dad.
Hey, nice to meet you, Mr. Russin.
This is our friend Damian.
Damian, how are you?
Doing okay.
Is it all true?
It's all true. I've been working on this podcast with your sons now for over a year, and we're finally. It's taken this long to get this thing finally finished.
Can't believe it.
It's been going on so long that now we have a father.
Okay.
Alex,
Who'd you think it
I
was?
don't know. Holy cow, this guy, who's Damian?
That's Damian.
It's me. Hi.
Damian, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How about yourself, sir?
But Ned, what's that on your shirt?
It says mental.
Oh, mental. Oh, I thought it said something else.
What do you think it said?
All right, cool.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Damian.
That has to stay in, right?
That's definitely that in, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely that in. Yeah, I can't have that cameo in there. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
He's just hanging out in here, by the way. So
Oh,
he
that's
didn't
cool.
leave the room.
The stories are definitely going to get a little more dialed down now. No more cold world stories. We have to move into title fight stories where they're a little more, a little safer for consumption of parents, probably.
He's leaving.
Yeah, but our group of friends didn't really like. Well, I mean, we picked on each, we beat on each other, and it was mental warfare amongst us. But it was sort of I don't think it was outside the group too much. Maybe.
Did we talk about the first thing you said to Lauren last time on the podcast?
What was it? Yeah, please cut that out.
My brother, Andrew Dice Clay.
He was definitely on his Andrew Dice Clay shit.
Free dickory dock.
Did you take it more seriously with Frostbite than
No. Frostbite. I didn't write anything. I just sort of just played to get out and play. Like I wrote like a couple mosh parts maybe, but like that was all the kid Ryan that sang did everything. So like, no, I didn't take it serious. I mean, Cold World I definitely took more seriously. I mean, I still it's serious in the sense that like, we wanted to put out stuff that like, represented what we thought would last and stuff like that. But like, it's not serious in the fact that like none of us are serious. Like I shouldn't say none of us are serious people because all of us are obviously, grown-ups with real, do real things. But like, once we get together, it's like, we've all been friends for so long that it's like, when you put more than two of us in the same setting, it's instant immaturity. So it's like that happens. And then like I think what you said, like with the Pavement comparison kind of makes sense to me, but like, that's the way that like we kind of approach the band too, is like when we get to play, it's very much like we don't want to kill it. We want to make sure we could do this another couple times and make people still enjoy it because we don't do it that much as is. And it's like, so we got to be selective with that, but we also want to make like it's like our time to kind of spend together. And like that's even different now too, like with so many of us, I mean, Skace, Dan, and me, we're all dads, right? Like, Nick's, getting married, Arthur's married, like we're all entered like this other part of our life where when you get to spend that time with just your friends, it's a really special time. So it's almost like even if you want to have a serious conversation, like you're almost like, I'm wasting this. Like I could do this whenever. I could have a real conversation. Like I could go have a conversation about the state of the socioeconomic state of America whenever the hell I want to. Like I could only talk about how hard could I punch you in the arm before your arm stops moving, once every year or so.
It's because also on stage you guys are laughing. You're like laughing with joking about each other on stage, and compared to like, especially at this moment of kind of like procore explosion, where you have coordinated stage moves, and people running back and forth on stage with wireless setups, and guitar players like punching the air and yelling out the lyrics to the crowd along with the singer. That's why I say it's like Pavement, because it's so much looser with what you guys are doing. And obviously Dan's getting the crowd going, and the reaction you guys had was insane the other night at that show. Like it was just ballistic. But at the same time, it's not because you guys are up there practicing. Like you said, you don't even coordinate your solos with Arthur, let alone like what you guys are going to do on stage. You know,
They don't even practice. Did you practice?
We practiced twice for that one.
it was tight. It was like one of the tighter Cold World shows I've seen, especially for 3 guitars.
I mean, I mean, I feel like, you know, and Arthur kind of does come from like a, you know, his makes his living, his career is as in music, right? In whatever capacity it is, like, you know, producer, engineer, playing, all that stuff. So like, he has a very different view on, you know, live performance than kind of, you know, Nick, Dan, and me do, right? You know, Skase and Haroon are kind of anomalous. They're in their own world, but I don't know what the hell they care about. But so like we were playing, and there was like a part where there was like backup vocals, and I look over and I hear it, and I look and I hear Arthur like yelling the vocals into the microphone, and I just looked at Nick. I'm like, what's he doing? And I just couldn't help but laugh. I was like, all right, keep it going. Like, this is great. Like, I don't know why. Like, it's hard to, like, I take it serious, but like some of like that stuff, like, and maybe it's part of me is like, I still think in terms of like when I think of Cold World, I don't think of like a band that can make money, even though like we get paid a couple of dollars when we play these things, which is awesome. Right. But like, I don't think of I can't think of Cold World like that. To me, Cold World is still like in my mind, it's just like free. Like I kind of separate like hardcore as like in like the pro version or whatever we want to call it, like into like pre-American Nightmare, post-American Nightmare, where like American Nightmare was like the first like real hardcore band that was like touring and making money, making a living, right? And like they showed that you could do that. Like aside from like Hatebreed and stuff, everybody else was like,
it's got to be sick of it all.
Sick of it all, yeah. I would say sick of it all too.
But I'm saying like, I'm thinking like kind of like in our world, right? Like amongst maybe like, because I'm sorry, I should say like amongst like somewhat peers, right? Like because they're like a little bit older than me, but like not too much. But like I remember, like, you know, demo and like the whole thing, right? Like Wes was 10-yard fights, roadie sort of stuff. Like I used to watch him mosh because he was a sick mosher sort of thing. But like from going from like the era of like you're doing weekends, and when you could take the time off your, you know, crappy job, whatever it is, you could do a week in California and maybe like a month around the country or something like that. Like, and like that's still how I think of Cold World. So it's like, it's just throw it together, hit it, go have fun, bang it out, jump off. And like, it's honestly like, it's the other guys who are the ones who are like, you know, people are paying money to see us. We're getting paid decent money. We should probably practice. Like, because if it were up to me, I'd be like, I don't know, what the hell's the point of practice? Let's just go play and have fun. And if we screw up, we'll start the song over. Who cares? The other guys are the ones who are like, we kind of gotta, you know, take that part a little more seriously. And they're right. But you know what I mean? It's like, I just still have like this same mindset of like, just go up and have fun and treat everybody like, you know, we're all friends sort of thing. And it's, you know, I'm too old to probably learn differently at this point. So like, as long as like we don't sound like crap, and as long as like we're not coming off as like I think there's also a difference between like coming off as like a joke band. Like, you know, like we're not, you know, we could talk about Weird Al whenever you want, but like we're not Weird Al like trying to make people laugh compared to a band that has fun and tells jokes to each other. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, so like there's a huge line, big difference there. And like, I mean, we all know everybody in Cold World well enough to know that like you can have a super serious conversation with us as quick as you can have the dumbest conversation on the planet. And like when we're up there and everything's going good, it's like you're in a good mood too. You know, when you're in the good mood, you're not having the serious you know, you're playful, you're joking around, stuff like that. So
but a lot of hardcore is like even when you're in the good mood, going into that character where you're putting on the hard face because that's the presentation of the band.
Well, and that's the other thing is like, none of us are that either. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I remember when we started Cold World, so there's a band from Northeast PA locally called Strength for a Reason, right? And Strength is like, when I was like getting into hardcore, it was almost like there was two totally separate worlds, right? It was like the Strength for a Reason world and like the dance and this band called Magnus, the Magnus world almost, right?
We talked about a lot of Magnus last time.
Yeah. So, right. So the little separate worlds almost, right? And like, but we were friends, but it was separate. I don't know how to explain it. It was really weird. And then the bass player from Magnus ends up playing in Strength for a Reason. And like, it really started to like put these things together, like around here locally. And I remember like Nick and me, before we started Cold World, being like, we love like that, like heavier, like, you know, real hitting music. You know what I mean? Like that, like, you know, like Madball, Cold as Life sort of stuff. Like, yeah, like that. We like that as much as we like the nerdy hardcore kid world sort of things. And it was like, we want to make sure that those things kind of meld together. So it's like, we like that. We experience that. Like we go to these shows and everything like that. But like we have no, like, we're not incorporating that like fraudulently or anything. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to be fraudulent and act like, you know, we're some, you know, group of like ass beaters or something like that, that like you can't, you know, have fun with. Because I mean, if you're not authentic when you play, then what the hell are you? Like, we live in there is no world that's going to sniff that out quicker than hardcore. Right. So like, if we're up there like trying to be tough guys or something like that, like, it's not going to work.
It's interesting because this is the first time that there's ever been a currency in aligning your band with hardcore in terms of like making it in punk.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it used to be like your band, you see all these bands and they become, and that would be the critique. Like they'd sign to a label or they'd make that jump or they'd start going for it and they'd try and distance themselves from hardcore and be like, oh, they're trying to become a metal band now, or they're trying to become like an alternative band now, or they're just trying like anything to shed the baggage of hardcore. But we're now at a point where like, yeah, it's cool. It's definitely it's I'm sure there's a point now where there's bands that have nothing to do with it claiming it, hoping that this is going to be the ticket to making it.
I think, you know, I've thought about that a lot lately too, which I mean, I think, and I don't know if you guys have thought about it, but like how big Title Fight is now, like since, you know, without putting out a record in how long. And I think it's kind of, a lot of it is that because like they are, every member of the band it's an authentic, every member of the band is like an authentic hardcore kid, right? Like it just like straight up and down, you know, lived it, not just knows about it, you know, was in shitty basements with 15 other people, you know, seeing every crappy band.
It took us a year to do this podcast because of Ned's dedication to it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't give up any days of the culture for this podcast.
Exactly. But like the music of it is not, you know, it's good. It's a good, catchy, you know, it has a nice, you could listen to it. It's not, you know, Cold World or just like, you know, straight up hardcore band where it's, you know, you either like it or you don't sort of thing, or maybe like you learn to like it sort of thing. Like Title Fight's a band you could put on and the only other rock band you listen to is like, what's it, the Mumford Sons or whatever. And
that's
you'd be
a little rude, but
that's
okay.
horrible. Oh my God, why'd you do that to them?
And like you're like, oh, like this is enjoyable music. Do you know what I mean? So it's like
for fans of Mumford and Sons.
Yeah, like I it makes sense to me that like this is how this is all happening now, because it's like people are searching for like, where am I getting like that authentic thing, and like, oh, this is an awesome place to start.
Yeah, no, and I think it's also just the band has become revered, and by not being out there's just been more and more generations that have discovered these records and not had access to it. But like it gets written about all the time. People write me all the time asking about Title Fight coming on the show, and it cool. It speaks to the importance you guys have had on this generation of kids and the moment that we're at right now with kind of punk and hardcore on an upswing again, it's very clear to see how you guys are key to getting to this point.
I don't think there's hardcore 2023 without Cold World.
Yeah, I think I'd say No Warning, Cold World, Trapped Under
Yeah.
Ice. I think
Yeah.
those are like, to me, the big three. And
Mhm.
it's like you were saying what you're doing, Alex, where you guys were taking this sort of like tough, thuggy scene that really was a parallel scene to this other kind of like hardcore scene that was also happening at the same time, that was like, yeah, a little bit nerdier. And it's interesting, like if you look at the history of punk and hardcore, there is this, and I talk about it on the show, but there's almost this like double helix of like art school, highfalutin values, aspirational politics type thing. At the same time, there's like this real street rock and roll thing that's coming from like a working class, real legit place. And it's like these two things kind of like at different points are out of line with each other and don't connect. And it's like that Cold World, Trapped Under Ice, No Warning, and I guess, Mental's in there too, stylistically. Certainly, Greg's sort of creative vision, I think, is really key to this point. But because of this, you have this double helix kind of converge again, where you have these guys that are like nerdy about punk and hardcore, know about bands like Infest, and know about all like the other highfalutin-ish stuff, which is weirdly not highfalutin in West Coast. But anyway, that's a separate thing. Meeting up with this sort of like East Coast tough, like street hardcore, and it's this moment that kind of begets this greater moment that we're in now, I kind of think.
I always think of it like YOT, like suburbanizing hardcore. It makes it like approachable in a way to people who would not have either access to it or would feel like afraid to enter it. And it just makes it more, I don't know. It makes it more approachable for like people out wherever they are to like find it and feel like they could take a part in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it like everyone was, like, and certainly some of these bands' cases like was cute too, and it was like a prettier face on it, like you're saying, like made it more accessible, like, which is, I guess, what Youth of the Day did as well. Like it, added a layer of sheen to things. But I think the other thing was that everyone in this moment was also very studied in punk and hardcore too, and like knew about everything. Like,
yeah,
Cold World and like some of the most musically literate people I know in terms of like the history of music and all this sort of stuff. And like, and even though No Warning guys, those guys studied. Like, you could watch a hardcore video and they could name everyone in the crowd. I finally met Dave Murphy the other weekend, and I'm like, I know you from Matt DeLong pointing you out in different videos to me over the years.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, those guys are definite. Like, they made me feel like I knew nothing about hardcore. Like when they would talk about, different videos and things like that, and undoubtedly, definitely on the nerdier side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting, like looking now where I don't think being a nerd is any sort of cachet now. Like, I don't think looking back in the past has as much value as it did for our generation. Like, it feels like, do you think?
It's almost so much more information to sift through now.
Yeah, there's too much information to sift through.
Like it's almost impossible. I think you kind of have to pick a lane. Maybe you don't have to, but it's like, I think that's why there's like a focus on early 2000s hardcore right now or something, or because it's like, it's easier, one, to find information about it, but two, it's like, that's 20 years away. And the stuff that we were getting into, I mean, I'm a little bit younger, but like the stuff that we were getting into that was 20 years before us was, for me, like, whatever, early US hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like the kind of like thing that you had to go through and sift through and find the information on and like decode all the messages about. And now it's just like, well, you could do that, and that's like kind of hard. And it's also kind of feels antiquated and boring and like almost, I don't know, irrelevant to where we are today. And it's like, if you want to get to where we are, you go and you watch videos on YouTube from Posy Numbers, and you like see who was moshing and like see who was singing along. And like, I think there's a lot of, I don't know, a lot of lineage in that era of like how we got to it today. It's like these are all important players, like and important bands that influence the bands that came right after them, and then like that kind of gets us to where we're at now. That seems much more relevant. But also like you don't have to do it anymore at the same, like what you're saying. It's not like, I don't know. I don't have the conversations about like, oh yeah, what about what JR was wearing at Posse Numbers 04, like the white sweatsuit, like that's stuff that I think is like amazing and like hilarious and very interesting, but it's like that's not like what people are talking about at shows anymore. And it's like it's fine. Maybe that's like I don't know, maybe it's always irrelevant, but there's a part of me that it's like I don't think it's more important and more interesting than anything else, but it's like that's just, I don't know, how I was raised to find interest in hardcore. It's like you go and find the weird little minutia because that's like the weird interesting stuff that makes it unique.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then this stuff only, and I think we talked about this last time, this stuff only has value because we give it value.
Yeah.
Like it's only important because this group of kids in DC that played fast music and yelled during the early 80s. Like there's no reason that should be canonized other than the fact that it has been canonized. So like, like it's great to build culture. Like that's amazing. Like caring about this sort of stuff. Like as it does, it doesn't change the world. It doesn't it certainly doesn't save the world. But at the same time, like we imbue it with importance and we give it, meaning and make it part of the sort of like tapestry that's been created over time.
Yeah. It's like, it's important if you say it is,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I always love. Like, when you meet, I can talk to anyone who's into something. Like if they're really passionately about, like any sort of like mundane collection thing, I can get down with it because they're like, they'll make it feel important when they're talking about it, being collecting toys or trains or records or, anything.
You're just talking about Hood Rack right now.
This War Hungry also came up because I had no idea that Alex Metz, who I met through wrestling, is from War Hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you met him through wrestling.
I met him through wrestling. He emailed me one day and was like, "Hey, do you want to come on this podcast I produce with Bully Ray?" And I was like, and he said, I'm friends with the Piss Jeans guys, and I know, the Cold World guys, but I had no idea it was the guy from War Hungry. I was like, that blew my fucking
His
mind.
wife is from here too, from Wilkes-Barre area.
Look at that. We're talking about the legends from this place.
We had a War Hungry practice at her house. We had a show the next day when I was playing with War Hungry, and she had us practice there before they were dating. And after the practice, I went up to Alex. I was like, "That girl's in love with you. You gotta hang out with her." And now they started dating the next day.
Look at that. You're like Cupid.
I don't know how. I'm batting. That's the only time I've ever said that, or in my life. So I'm batting 1,000 too.
Yeah.
So you should take my advice on love.
Yeah, definitely test your powers more.
No.
Give more people advice.
I'm going out high.
Well, I think speaking of going out high, I don't know. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I was thinking, I don't know if we mentioned this the last time, but we were talking about Cold World. Did we talk about Dan actually drove Title Fight on our first US tour?
No.
In our old conversion van. So that, we were 17 years old, maybe 18.
We were 17, yeah.
And it was just us. Our parents trusted us with Dan and our family's old conversion van that we sold to Dan. Why did Dan buy that? Or was it for
Cold World Tour?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just stuff in there.
That's the benefit of being the youngest children.
Wow.
And the tour booked through MySpace with Tiger Jaw. And
I remember I went to one of the shows and it was outside. And there was, I think it was free too. And it was like maybe 15.
Bedford, Massachusetts.
Yeah, maybe 15 people there? Maybe.
Yeah.
No, there was like 30.
And I remember I was Jeff from Run for Cover. I was talking to him, and I remember saying to him, like, I bet you in 4 or 5 years, every person at this show is going to be like, I saw Title Fight in Tiger's Jaw with like 15, 20 other people for free outside, like nobody was there. And I mean that kind of came true.
Fucking Wikiface or
Wikiface.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Adam, yeah.
Adam.
It's
Wikiface.
yeah, I think so much of what we did we were made to think was possible because of Cold World. And they like actually made it possible by like Alex taught us how to play songs and Dan took us on tour. And it's like that's the kind of I don't know.
And they would wear Title Fight shirts on before we had anything, you know.
Yeah. I think like that's why we were able to do what we did is because of like the foundation that they laid for us.
Yeah, I mean we also, you know, I mean, you guys are kind of selling. I feel like Title Fight is very good at selling themselves short on a lot of things. Like, you know, a lot of our friends have had brothers in bands or friends in bands that you've said to somebody, hey, check this out. And you're like, oh yeah, cool. And you know, you walk away, you turn around. But I mean, I remember when they were, you know, when was that first? I feel like Greg put you guys on a show in New Jersey at that church.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty early on. But like I remember
like 2005, right?
with Colwell, right?
Yeah, that's where you took the pictures for the split.
Yeah,
100.
okay.
Yeah.
And like I didn't tell who booked that, Greg. I didn't say like put Title Fight on the show. He was like, yeah, I like your brother's band. They're good. Like they're playing too. You know what I mean? So it was like, yeah, we knew people. I'm sure, yeah, it makes it a little bit easier. But you know, it's yeah, they did it. You guys did it yourselves. Like, I mean, so our parents are currently selling their house that I've lived in for 37 years. Well, we've been here for 30, you know, I've moved out many times, but and you know, it's I think we've all hit our various points of a lot of nostalgia. And like for me, one of those things I've been listening to, I'm like, I kind of want to listen to like all the songs that were written in this house. Like, because it's kind of a weird thing where like, you know, there's probably not too many houses that have had like a lot of like kind of cool songs come out of it. So I've been like kind of like revisiting that.
Discord House. Probably.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not gonna. I'm sure there's, you know, I don't think we compare with, you know, Aleister Crowley's house for you know, Zeppelin recordings, but it's cool.
Yeah.
So, but like I remember like listening. So my oldest kid is 10, and she's playing guitar and she's, you know, she's getting okay at it and stuff like that. But like, how old were you guys for the early Title Fight stuff? 13?
We started when we were 12, yeah.
12, right? So 2 more years. And actually probably playing your instruments like not even as long as Julia has at this point. But like hearing those songs, I'm like, this is incredible. Like to write this at that age and like be that tight is outrageous. Like to be able to do this. Like, so it's like, you know, they are the kings of, it's not like manufactured humility either, because it could be a conversation with just any one of them and it's the same thing. But like, they're the kind of the kings of selling themselves short. So I'll say it for them. Like it was easy to like talk to people like, hey, you know, this is my brothers or whatever, you know, you should check them out. Or, you know, everybody else, you know, these were our friends, whatever it might be, you know, young kids from town. But like, it doesn't mean anything if the songs aren't good and if the, you know, people don't like the people in the band. So like for them to do what they did and their importance was, you know, I think anything you do, anything that's happened in, you know, our world of punk and hardcore has happened on the backs of what others have done before us in some capacity, you know, whether it's people from your town or people you never met before. You know, I mean, there's, you know, you can go as far as you want with that sort of stuff, but like you still have to put in the work and you still have to do what you're doing. And these guys were writing better songs at that age than I could ever dream of, you know. And
I think you wrote a song on
the
first demo.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's probably the best one. I forget. I have to hear it.
2003, 20 years ago.
But you know what I mean? Like they will always sell themselves short on that. And then just also the other thing that they sell themselves short on here, to before we get off, I'll say this too, is like the importance they've had on where music has gone, and not just in, I mean, with what we're talking about with how big hardcore is now, but the importance that these guys have had individually, collectively, the way that they talk. Like, I mean, I could say this with complete certainty that you don't get a band like I think I'm sure we touched on this probably too many times, but like a band like Turnstile, right, who is making a very, they're huge, they're doing great, but are still doing things literally like, you're not going to go to them and be like, hey, write a song that sounds like this. Like they're not going to do that. Whereas before, there was a long period of time in music, you weren't getting big without being able to do that. But like a band, like Title Fight was the band who was like, we're doing things our way. We're doing art our way. We're using our friends for art. And they got huge doing it, which kind of gave a lot of bands inspiration to be like, we're doing it our way no matter what, even if sometimes maybe that's emulating, something else a little too much. But it's, I think their importance in setting the almost like a reset of like a moral compass for a lot of people in a lot of ways too, is that's something that I think has to be attributed to these guys, that they'll undersell every time also, which, and I'm looking at like, not people, old like you and me, Damian, but like, the younger kids who like are coming up, and like that was the band they looked up to, who was like, up there saying the right things, doing the right things, doing things their way, and like, you're like, yeah, you could still do it and still play to a lot of kids and still do something important. So, they will probably don't even admit this. They probably think I'm talking about somebody else. But it's, in my opinion, they are, and again, I'm biased too, but like, I think they're one of the most important bands to come out of our subgenre of music, in my time involved with it, which is, since like the mid-90s.
Whatever your parents did, they have raised the most supportive siblings I've ever spoken to in my life.
Go get dad. Tell him that.
Yeah, because
I was just motherfucking Ben left and right about 20 minutes before
that. You guys definitely, it's amazing, and I definitely appreciate all of your musics, and I think it's amazing how, as you're saying, like all three of you wind up doing stuff in this thing, and anytime, years from now, minutes from now, you want to come back on this show, probably separately. I don't think any of us have the energy to try and wrangle all three of us together again, but yeah. You guys are always welcome on this podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Damian. Can you put out a poll for your listeners? Grudge match or committed?
Saying the committed demo, 98 demo.
I'll go demo to demo.
Amazing.
We got right here.
Wow.
Never out of arm's length.
Ready right here. No, I got my Cleveland demos right in front of me.
Amazing. I got my committed demo right over there.
Committed. Committed is originally the lineup is 2 OLC dudes.
Yep.
The one dude who stayed in the band, and then Vanessa Bayer from Saturday Night Live's brother.
Wait, Jonah was in Committed?
Yep.
What?
Thank you, Alex, Ben, and Ned for coming on the show. And you heard right there, at some point in the future, in some configuration, one or maybe all of the Russin brothers will be back on the show. But when and how and in what shape it will be, I cannot tell you right now, but I can tell you that was a lot of fun, and we love talking about hardcore and punk. So, anytime that opportunity presents itself, we will take it here at Turned Out a Punk and have them on the show. Speaking about opportunities, you've got a great opportunity next episode of Turned Out a Punk to check out back to one guest who is a legit rock and roll Hall of Famer, someone that played in the band The Veins, The Farts, The Silly Killers, tons more, 27 other bands, Seattle punk bands, as well as GNR and Velvet Revolver, and maybe above all of those things, also was a member of the Fastbacks. On the next episode of Turned Out a Punk, Duff McKagan is here, and we will be talking about Seattle punk. That's really all we talk about, and you'll hear it on the next episode. This is a conversation that's taken years to hit your ears. It started with an appearance on the Danko Jones podcast. There's a Phantom episode somewhere buried in Turned Out a Punk where Duff McKagan may or may not be on under a pseudonym. I'm not saying any more about that, but Duff is going to be on in real name, no gimmicks this time around on the next episode of Turned Out a Punk. Well, that is it for us on today's episode. Remember, as always, Black Lives Matter. The lives and issues of Indigenous peoples all over the world matter. We need to protect trans kids and help trans people protect themselves and their rights. And stop hate and violence towards people of different sexual preferences, different races, different religions, different nationalities. We got to knock all that shit out because we're not talking about political issues here. We're just talking about basic human rights. People deserve to live free from the threat of violence and hatred and discrimination. And yeah, so just there's organizations that are affecting positive change in the world around you. Get involved. Donate your time, your money, and if you have it to spare. There's a lot of organizations that are doing a lot of great work out there right now, and you can get involved and it'll make you feel better because you'll be helping to affect positive change. Speaking of positive change, try meditating. I know people have been saying this stuff for years, but it really, shock of shocks, it really does work. And you don't have to subscribe to any sort of special discipline or any of that stuff. Just find something that works for you and do it and see if you feel better too, because it worked for me. Speaking about working for people, sign those organ donor cards because I have seen that perform miracles. I have definitely seen organ transplants give people new leases on life. So sign those organ donor cards because by the time they come looking for those organs, you're not going to need them. And it can, what a great legacy to leave behind. Speaking of leaving behind a legacy, get involved in this music shit. Start a band. Start a fanzine, start a record label, start a podcast. Any asshole can do that. But go out there and just do something, make something, contribute to this culture because it gets better when you contribute to it. That's the best thing about punk. It's just kind of like a choose your own adventure. You just show up and you start making stuff and doing stuff. Well, I've got to get over this sickness. I've been sick for a few days now, so I'm going to go rest up. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Stay safe.